Opened up Badlands, explained those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, Russia, Russian, 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 the Russians. Russia,
Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots, their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. Missing Patrick tonight, but we got Chris here. Chris, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are the whores?
Oh, I think you said whores.
Well, okay. How are the whores? And then
The
how
horrors, the horrors persist, but so do I. As for the whores, you would have to ask Hunter Biden.
That's a good response. Yeah, Patrick cannot be with us tonight because he is at a dance competition, and I believe he's doing all right. We got some video. I'm like now convinced that he was using the guard dance just to practice and prepare for this competition because these are like the same moves.
Is that what he was doing at on the dance floor at Gart?
Maybe it was hard for me to tell.
I thought this was
looked
just
very
going to be
similar
them doing the Trump dance. I thought that was just going to be that competition.
That would have been a better one. Probably more entertaining. But he's doing pretty good. But anyway, he does have big shoes to fill. We're going to do our best to fill those dancing shoes with a different co-host tonight. So we got Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. We're going to try to not derail to talk about the juice too much, but no promises. Ghost, how you doing?
I'm great, man. How are y'all?
Doing well.
And to answer that other question, I would say the horrors, I would assume, also persist.
The whores or the horrors? Now I'm confused.
Both.
They all persist. Yeah, I mean, you can't get to be the oldest job in the history of the world without a lot of persisting.
Some persistence is required. All right. Well, we do have a pretty interesting show, I think, lined up. We're going to talk a little bit about the Trump transition process. We're going to talk about us being the news now again, in my opinion, because I think things are just kind of going to go right back to how they were before if we aren't a little careful. We're also going to talk. What was the other thing? Oh, Trump's, how you phrased it, Chris, his fantasy draft that he's doing.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's playing fantasy sports with the third season of The Apprentice Trump administration.
Yeah, so that'll be a pretty fun discussion. And then we will allow Ghost to take us into the Middle East for some discussions surrounding what's going on over there. So all in all, it should be fun. Before we get into that, we're going to get to our first two sponsors of today's show. And first up, we got a little Easy RX. Tonight's show is brought to you by our partners at Easy RX. With government failures and devastation running rampant, it's never been a better time to stockpile popular medications like amoxicillin, azithromycin, ivermectin, fenbendazole, hydroxychloroquine, and other viral care medications, and so much more. Right now, Easy RX is having their best sale of the year. For a limited time, Badlanders will receive 25% off purchases of $100 using promo code Black Friday. Ghost, you just blew my entire ad read, bro, with that little throat clear. Just kidding. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/EasyRx and use promo code Black Friday for 25% off purchases over $100. Stock up on those antibiotics and necessary meds. badlandsmedia.tv/EasyRx. And we're going to have to send you some meds for that cough.
Yeah, I thought that kind of sold the whole thing, right?
Sold the whole thing. Next sponsor tonight, and I love this product so much. I still take this nearly every day. The biggest sale of the year, guys, at Brickhouse Nutrition is on. This is your chance to save a ton on all their doctor-formulated products. One of my favorites is Field of Greens. That's the one I take almost every day. Right now, you'll save 30% on their best-selling fruit and vegetable super drink that promises your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back. It's by far the best tasting and best working fruit and vegetable drink I've ever had. And I prefer the wild berry flavor, by the way. Also, the other product, Lean, the doctor-formulated weight loss phenomenon of the year, is on sale. The reviews on this product are incredible, and it's a total game changer for folks trying to lose weight. Everything's on sale, and there is literally no better time of the year. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use code VIP. That's promo code VIP at fieldofgreens.com. Last time, don't forget, promo code VIP, fieldofgreens.com. All right, we do have a third sponsor tonight, but we'll get to them a little later. I'll keep you guys in suspense. But all right, let's let's talk a little bit about the We Are the News Now thing, 'cause that's more just a general discussion. Elon Musk, like we were searching before the show, like how many times he's posted this, and it's been almost daily since like November 9th. And all of Twitter, all of Connick, all these people, everybody who a lot of the gatekeepers in the media and on social media the last few years have been reposting this, and it's been like a battle cry. And Chris, you had a pretty interesting post. I could even read it if that might be best.
Even before that, though, let's talk for a second about what this statement is, right? It's basically a statement that was repeated in the Q drops, which a lot of these people have ignored. They've slandered people who have even bothered looking at the drops, thinking about the drops and what they mean. And now that's out there. Elon Musk is kind of, he mentioned a Q drop. He tweeted a Q meme. He's being pretty overt about spotlighting that or drawing attention to it, at least in some way. Who knows what for, right? We can leave that open to interpretation. But if he's drawing closer to that, you'd expect that there would be people on the other side trying to dilute any impact of what he might be doing. And maybe this is along those lines.
What do you mean?
So if Elon Musk, for instance, pointed out devolution, and you were a counter op that never wanted anybody to look at devolution, you would immediately just start throwing all sorts of shit at the wall and seeing whatever stuck. Like, what can we conflate that idea with so that people their attention will be directed away from it? So it could be something like that. I don't know.
I will say We Are the News Now was the Badlands Media slogan for about a year and a half. So maybe he's trying to draw people's attention to us. But yeah, Ghost, what do you got on it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's going to be this effort to kind of capture, talking about the people who are posting this over and over again, to kind of capture the attention of the truth movement, the awakening process, and then kind of lead us back into the slaughterhouse. As far as Elon doing it, I feel like Elon is a signal when he's posting the Q memes and he's posting, hat tips to anons and colloquialisms like that. I think that's exactly what he's doing. Is he's just kind of sending out signal, and it's one after the next.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's a Q reference for sure. And maybe he's just kind of hinting at like, hey, you're the news now, more in the sense that the mainstream news, mainstream media is like destroyed. I mean, they're making themselves irrelevant. He's even hinted at the last couple of days buying MSNBC. Like his Christmas impulse buy is going to be a news company, which is pretty funny. But it's like being taken seriously by a lot of people. And maybe that's just what he's referring to, but a lot of people are writing that. And so I see what you're saying, being a Q reference and everybody kind of like, yep, we're the news now, but let's not talk about the Q thing. That is pretty interesting. Especially,
man,
wasn't it like 2 days ago? Sorry, 2 days ago or something. There's a Q, somebody mentioned a Q drop and he was like, I don't know what a Q drop is, but everything else he said is spot on. And it's ridiculous.
Well, and did you see the Flynn response to the Q meme? General Flynn responded with like the GIF of the guy with the huge bag of popcorn eating the popcorn.
Oh no, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
The thing about spinning off MSNBC and then selling that, we also got a hint that Google might spin off the Chrome browser, and that's its own kind of weird thing because there are already kind of Chrome clones out there like Brave, but TikTok divested from ByteDance. These are the sort of things that we are seeing happen. All of these, I think, are going to mirror the Twitter model where, I think these things are being seized and then privatized, and that Elon is essentially just the face of Twitter. I don't believe it's possible to buy the greatest information weapon in the history of the world for $44 billion from billionaires who use it to control the world. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's got to be something else. And so I think we're seeing that model a bunch of times. Also, NBC News is kind of the umbrella, of course, of MSNBC. And Trump threatened, he went after CBS's broadcast license because, of course, the networks are federally regulated, NBC would count for the same thing. There might be some relationship with MSNBC and the overt bias expressed on that network and the slander and defamation of Donald Trump and others. Maybe that's kind of that blowback is reaching NBC now.
Could be. I mean, Twitter has been great, but it's definitely like still broken. We are the news now, and Tiffany Fong is the highest paid journalist in the Twitter world. Like, it's insane how much money
is she the highest though?
Oh, probably not.
Some of those people were making a ton of money like a year ago. I remember when that first started, and like Ian Miles Chong was like, I just made $12,000 this week.
Yeah, but
like
this is my thing. Like, we bitch and moan about some of this stuff just because we were hoping at some point this would like change and actually become a fair platform. Like Tiffany Fong gets she gets retweeted by Elon Musk, and that is her source of revenue. She goes and replies to everything he says, gets retweeted often, and that's how she makes $40,000 a month. And I'm still waiting to get my approval for my subscriptions. It's been 2 years, and I can't even get my pending approval or review or whatever for subscriptions on my page. Not that I would even like use it. It's just the fact that I can't even get it. Like, it's just bullshit.
I can't get them to admit that I actually owned my account, even though they have my payment information for when I was paying for the VIP account.
Oh, that's right. Somebody hacked your account or whatever.
Whatever they call the premium thing. Yeah. You tipped me off to that.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I do like, it's where I spend the most of my time on Twitter because it is kind of fun, but there's definitely still so much gatekeeping going on and a lot of conning bullshittery. So I hope it clears up. Like, could you imagine Stormy having his account back? Didn't he have like 200,000 followers or something? Like,
yeah,
all those Q accounts.
Yep.
The We Are the News Now, but none of the original people saying that have their accounts back. So stupid. But yeah, this kind of ties into the next topic we're going to discuss a little bit, which is these admin posts, the cabinet. I think Trump's entire cabinet is now filled out. And
CNN has a tracker. Hold on, let me reload it and I'll just share it on the screen.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't even know what to think. Like, they don't really affect me necessarily because I believe Trump knows exactly what he's doing. Some picks might be legit. Some picks might be some sort of op. Like, we can just dissect each one. But seeing everybody on social media freak out over every single one, it's just it's the stuff that we talk about a lot. And I don't know. The Gates situation is more confusing than anything. But
yeah,
that's the tracker, by the way, and he just announced Brooke Rollins tonight. So all of that is now filled, and then they have the other key roles section. So
Brooke Rollins is an interesting one. I think I wrote about her in my series at one point.
Wasn't she the lead attorney on Rico Grande as well?
Yeah,
the Trump civil Rico.
Well,
I could
know
be totally wrong about that. I haven't looked in a long time, but
she was head of the AFPI. I believe that's the one. And they were one of the agencies. Yeah, down here in my part 13, I list all those agencies that, kind of the new devolved government running a lot of the things that Trump was going to need done while he's away. And yeah, American First Policy Institute. John Ratcliffe was over there. Chad Wolf. And I'm pretty sure she became the president. But I want to believe there's another article where I wrote about her in. Let me find this. Yeah, Gordon, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, so Chris's post I thought on Telegram earlier was excellent and may even be worth looking at. I definitely feel like the whole cabinet situation is an op. The 2016, for those who were like really honed in and following this daily, this feels very similar, but also very different from 2016 because. So as of November 12th, or I'm sorry, November 17th, 12 days after the election, I don't know where we are now, but I specifically remember the ratio was 12-12. So we were 12 days in, he had 12 picks. So he was averaging 1 pick a day, but he wasn't releasing the pick every day. It's like he was releasing them in clusters and then they were getting like scrutinized and analyzed. The whole thing to me feels like an op, like an exposure disclosure op. And to your point, John, that doesn't necessarily mean the people that he's picking are good or bad. I think I view it more of like they have baggage, probably. and the baggage being exposed from scrutinizing journalists or citizen journalists is ultimately going to like pull on threads and unravel things and point us in directions for things that we should be looking at. And Matt Gaetz, if we start there, that is probably the biggest signal. If you want to share my screen, I have a story here from 2021, which I didn't even know about until I found it to write a take for the brief the other day.
If you want to pull it up.
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I already did.
But before you even do that, while you're doing that, this is I did write about her before in my part 15. This task force that came out of EO 13887, which was the modernization of the Influenza Act stuff. The key people on that act or on the task force were Robert O'Brien, and then the assistant to the president for domestic policy, which was a joint position, or it was handed over from Joe Grogan to Brooke Rollins. So she would have been on that task force at one point. Okay, go ahead, Ghost.
So this is an article from March of 2021, or this is from, I'm sorry, September 2021, but it was reported originally in March of 2021. And you'll remember that at that time, everyone was hyper focused on the stolen election. So nobody was really paying attention to Matt Gaetz. But it's actually a shame that Patrick's not here because this involves Scott Adams and the Dilbert cartoons. But the really, really short version of it, because I don't want to spend a lot of time telling the story, is that a tax collector in Florida was hyper corrupt. Like he spent $70,000 on a government credit card on prostitutes. He was doing embezzling. He was running like a crypto market manipulation scam. All this stuff. It was pretty messed up. Basically, a guy challenges him in the election, and he gets so threatened by this guy that he decides he's going to destroy this guy's life. So he writes a bunch of handwritten notes to the guy's school because the guy's like a music teacher, and he said he accuses the guy of molesting kids. They get turned over to the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office finds his fingerprints and DNA all over the letters, and pulling on the thread basically leads his lawyer to offer up to the FBI. They say, hey, in exchange for clemency against my client, we have evidence that Matt Gaetz was having an affair with a 17-year-old because this guy was also having an affair with. And what ends up happening is that the FBI gets this information.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Like whether that's actually true or not is kind of irrelevant at this point. But what they do is they take the information and they go to Matt Gaetz's dad. And there's a lot of other crazy stuff that happens, but we'll skip over all that. They go to Matt Gaetz's dad in 2021 and they say, hey, for $25 million, if you give us $25 million, we will get Joe Biden to pardon your son. And Matt and his dad is like, what the hell is happening right now? So he tells Matt, and Matt says, call the FBI, and he wears a wire, goes back into a meeting with this guy. This guy is a former like FBI agent. He's a former prosecutor from the DOJ. He worked on the organized crime corruption unit.
Can I slow you down? So is this the story of why Gaetz didn't get like Senate approved, correct?
Yes.
And so he was under investigation quietly. It was started by the Trump DOJ, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, correct.
Carried out. But the whole story behind why he was actually being investigated turned out to be kind of bullshit.
Yep, exactly.
And his dad didn't even know that he was under investigation.
Exactly.
It wasn't even public until like 2021 or 2022 after all this went down.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. And so his dad goes back into a meeting with this former FBI agent. This is like a deep state shill. McGahee, I think it was his name. McGee. David McGee, I think was his name. He wears the wire. He catches him. The guy has now been sentenced to 5 years in prison for extortion because he was trying to extort Matt Gaetz's dad. It's worth noting that Gaetz hasn't been charged with anything. So if any of this story is true about this 17-year-old girl, you would expect Gaetz to have been charged with something because it would have been either prostitution or pedophilia or something. He hasn't been charged with anything. His dad wore a wire into this meeting and caught the FBI agent. The FBI agent has gone to prison now for 5 years. But at the heart of all of this is this Dilbert Scott Adams character. And he comes out, like, when he reads about this in the newspaper about Matt Gates' dad wearing the wire, he comes forward and says, hey, this actually is something that I'm aware of. And the reason I'm aware of it is because I have a contact, this guy named Novak, Jake Novak. He's a staffer at the Israeli consulate in New York. And basically him and I stay in touch because, you know, he tries to influence me because he wants me to insert pro-Israel ideas into like Dilbert, basically. And
does he do that?
Well, I mean, so right here he says, people, quote, people with connections to Israel had a high interest in me during the Trump days, presumably to influence me, Adams told Politico via text message. Jake and I shared an interest in the mechanics of persuasion and in interesting business/political stories in general, most often the stuff with the persuasion or Israel angle. That was our initial connection. People often tell me their scoops before they hit the news just to build credibility. Might have been that. And so what he says,
he did do that. So he did.
Yeah. Well, and let me pull up. I'll just pull the text up. I'll show you. This is kind of crazy, and I kind of credit Scott because he pushes back here, but it's kind of hard to read, so I'll just read it to you. But here are the screenshots. So he posts these screenshots online. He's like, I want everyone to see that this is the text exchange I had with this guy. And so Jake had texted him and said, hey, this is going to come out. And then he texts him when the story comes out in March. This is March.
Hold on. So what does this have to do with the Gates thing? Like, how does this connect?
So this connects because Jake Novak, long before the story went public, this guy who worked at the Israeli consulate in New York was telling Scott Adams that this was happening. He was like, hey, Matt Gates is a pedophile. There's an investigation going on right now, and it's going to come public soon. I mean, the question, of course, is how does a guy working at the Israeli consulate in New York even know that? But then when the story finally goes public, he texts it to Scott Adams and says, told you. And Scott Adams replies and says, the allegations against him do not sound credible. Jake responds, I don't want to believe them, but my source says it looks bad from closer in. And then Scott says, I'm betting against it, but the extortion counterclaim sounds credible, has witnesses apparently. And then the response, the backstory is this is screwing up my efforts to Bob Levinson. Gates' dad was secretly finding us. He means funding us. So I'm very much wanting this to be untrue. I've got a commando team leader, friend of mine, nervously waiting for wire transfers to clear. Bob Kent is my lifelong friend. Bob Kent is a Air Force intelligence officer who orchestrated the whole extortion scheme against Don Gates. This is
so sum this up. Basically, he's explaining that he has evidence or that this is coming out, and Scott Adams is pushing back on it.
Yeah, and he's saying we have documents, and then Scott Adams says they have documents, and at the end of it, Scott's like, I'm unconvinced. And so then Scott kind of blows this guy's spot up by posting these online. The Israeli government is forced to come out and distance themselves from Jake Novak and say, you know, we disavow everything Jake Novak said. There's no way he should know any of this stuff. Of course, he isn't like punished or fired or anything. But the point gets back to the fact that what I can discern from it, what I think is going to happen. I mean, Gates is now saying, I'm not going back to Congress, even though he resigned or withdrew from Congress. He withdrew from the Congress in session right now. He's joining the next Congress in January.
He could have stayed on and joined the 119.
Yeah. Yes.
He said that he's not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And so he said, instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go public with all of the corruption in DC. That's what he said. What you would think he would start with this story right here. I think what they tried to do is they tried to Epstein him. They tried to Epstein him with this girl. Whether or not the story is true, it could be true or untrue. But either way, they basically tried to set him up, and then they tried to compromise him with this extortion racket. I mean, $25 million for a Biden pardon is what he was offered.
Yeah, and it was to get like some prisoner from Iran that they thought was dead the whole time anyway or something. Another thing I heard about this story is that like it was actually a 17-year-old, but they had like a legit 18-year-old ID because the guy worked at he had connections with the
tax collector, the
DMV or something.
The tax collector has has access to driver license machines, and so he was making fake IDs for himself, and he made the girl a fake ID as well that said she was an adult, and they continued to have a relationship.
Yeah. So anyway, whether or not any of this is true, it's an interesting saga that this was being used to get Gates out of office, and
Yeah.
he's saying some.
And so none of this is secret. Like, this is not like secret information. This is publicly reported in 2021, but none of us knew about it. Like, I didn't know about this. But now that Trump chose to appoint him as attorney general, all of this is being recycled and coming back to the surface and saying, oh, did you know about this story from March 2021? Probably not, because you were hyper focused on the stolen election. Here's what happened. And I feel like you pull on this thread and you're going to start to see like the swamp unravel. And we're probably going to get more. I expect we're going to get a lot more of this moving forward. Pam Bondi, by the way, is now being accused because she worked as a lobbyist for Qatar.
Well, slow your roll goes. Before we go to Bondi, let's stick on Getz for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So Gates, this is a weird story. This whole thing here is weird, but also him not going back to Congress. There's rumors about him potentially getting put into the Senate by DeSantis. He himself has been having he's had like a few cryptic Twitter posts where he's been like, you remember Jack Smith and the Democrats wrote hundreds of legal arguments about why you don't need to be Senate confirmed to be a special counsel. And a lot of people are talking about maybe Matt Gaetz will be special counsel. I personally don't see a path for that. And it's because, one, the Clarence Thomas, he wrote his concurrent opinion in the immunity ruling, basically arguing what you need to have to be a special counsel. And one of those things was you either need to be Senate confirmed or Congress needs to legally fund and create a position for you. And so if Gaetz can't get confirmed for the Senate, like doesn't get the votes, he's not going to get the votes to be special counsel there. Like he's not going to get appointed or approved by the Senate if Trump appointed him as special counsel. And so then it relies on the House, and Gaetz like made a ton of enemies in the House with the rhinos there. I have a hard time believing they're going to now change their tune and create a special counsel office for him either. So it's hard. It's possible, but it's hard for me to see that path. Maybe things change. But Chris, I'm curious what your take is on everything you just heard.
So the Gates thing, yeah, that was out and pretty public back in 2021, as Ghost said, and I think it cycled through on War Room a couple of times. They talked about that Gates issue, and Gates has always been a regular guest over there. You know, when I see a past scandal that didn't work at the time come back into the spotlight, especially in a moment like this, I mean, it seems like a piece of blackmail that never really panned out, and they simply burned it because they didn't have anything on them. You know, there are times where a scandal like this, if the media had control of the narrative, maybe they would have been luckier. Maybe they would have been able to sell this thing and actually disrupt this cycle. And sometimes I wonder if they are playing those stories through because that's just how their playbook is written, and they're going to run through all the plays, whether they're working or not. Gates rescinding this nomination at that point on a scandal from a few years ago that didn't become a big deal at the time, that doesn't really make any sense to me.
No.
And then there was the JD Vance kind of non-controversy this week about not showing up for the Senate votes. He says he's too busy vetting FBI directors. There's like basically no way that could possibly be true. No. And then the next day he's in the Senate with Matt Gaetz to introduce Matt Gaetz to all the senators and tell them how great Matt Gaetz is, as if they've never heard of him. And then the next day Gaetz withdraws his nomination. So the whole thing just seems orchestrated to me. I know that people think it's apparently irresponsible or something to talk about that. I don't know. They keep going to something new that's now irresponsible to talk about. Like we mentioned the election results last week. It's now down under 2.5 million. And we're still, you know, it was irresponsible for the last 4 years to talk about how the elections are fake because it would discourage people from voting in fake elections. And now it's like the elections are automatically or like obviously fake, and no one, we just have other things now that we're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah. And a big thing I'm seeing about not being allowed to talk about stuff is criticizing Trump's picks, right? Like you can simultaneously trust that Trump knows exactly what he's doing.
Yes.
But what if he's doing these things because he wants people to publicly criticize these things and call them out? Like, what if that is the whole purpose of it? And
Yes.
I posted the thing about the Scott, is it Scott Bessent? I keep getting his name wrong.
Yeah.
This guy, he's been named the head of the Treasury. He's been on ban, and I know he's got a great financial mind. I get it. He basically stole $1 billion for his fund back. I don't even remember which country they completely robbed blind with. It was all his idea. He did it for George Soros. He worked for Soros for like 20 years, left, came back for another 10 years, and then went and started his own firm with Soros seed fund, like money. And I saw this whole article in Revolver News where they're like, I know we had this, years long reporting on Soros and all the bad things Soros did and the reasons why we can't trust George Soros. But this guy that basically was his right-hand man for decades, like we don't have to be concerned about this guy. I mean, why can't we have question marks and call some of that stuff out while simultaneously knowing that maybe Trump has a plan here? Like, I fully believe that, but we don't know what the plan is. And so we can't operate as if we just blindly trust him or anybody.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's okay to look at these people. I mean, the public, if we're going to have a government of, by, and for the people should take some responsibility to know who the people are, who they are handing their power over to. And we can get to some of that in a second. But if Donald Trump is the man that we all believe him to be, then he should want us to be doing that. The public should be vetting all of these candidates. And it's not like we're approaching it the way the conning people do or the way the people on the left do, where they will figure out a bad thing about that person and then shift immediately to saying Donald Trump is terrible for that person, and MAGA are all cultists for supporting that person, and immediately direct it to their anger to where it was directed before. We're saying, hey, maybe this candidate right here that he's nominated for this post isn't that good of a candidate for that thing. Maybe there's some corruption. Maybe these things we have to know about. I mean, the Surgeon General person, you've got the vaccine complaint, the lockdown complaint, some COVID censorship complaints. All that might be totally valid. And people are like, but Marty McCarry, he was based during COVID. Well, no, he wasn't. He was giving the controlled opposition side of it. He wasn't blowing the COVID narrative apart. He was just being critical of the central narrative. And so, the point to make beyond that, and I'll pause for a second, but the point to make beyond that is that none of these people really have any power to begin with. And whatever power they have in these agencies is systematically being stripped away by the rest of what Trump is doing.
Yep. Compare 1 second, Ghost. Compare Trump's COVID vaccine stance. So he's out here like promoting vaccines, and everybody's like, he can say that stuff. There's a plan behind it, but like that doesn't mean I'm going to take it, and that doesn't mean I can't criticize it and like all these things, whatever, and know they're bad and understand they're bad. What if it's the same thing with these cabinet picks? What if Trump is pushing a guy or promoting a guy or anything, and we don't have to like it? We don't have to agree with it. We can actively argue against it and have our opinion on a person and do our research on it. But he's doing it for a reason. Like, we shouldn't blindly just trust anybody while simultaneously understanding that there are bigger things going on behind the scenes. Like, those two things can coexist and be connected. Go ahead, Ghost.
Yeah. So Bessett, I see Peachy Grits in the chat said, can't get worse than sleeping with Soros, question everything. I agree with that. I would actually like to point out that there is another employer that he worked for, Brown Brothers Harriman Bank. And for those who don't know what that is, it's a bank that after World War I, the end of World War I, the Dulles brothers, who founded the CIA later, basically create conditions that completely bankrupt Germany. And within like a year, you had a loaf of bread go from 5 marks to 1 million marks, like almost overnight. They got real hyperinflation. What we have right now is minor compared to what they experienced. And basically, these oligarchs on Wall Street laundered a bunch of money to Germany through the Netherlands using Brown Brothers Harriman Bank, and their agent to do that was a Texas oilman named Prescott Bush, whose son became president and grandson became president. And basically, that's how they created the Third Reich. They funded the whole thing. And these same guys turned around and funded the Bolsheviks as well. So Brown Brothers Harriman was the bank that did that. This guy worked for that bank. This is absolutely a globalist oligarchy Prussian, like London Prussian bank. And so I think when like Trump is putting these people in place, like Gates, Besant. There's others we can talk about. I think he's doing the thing with the laser pointer where he wants the cat to like tackle the wall. I really do think that's what it is. He's highlighting things that we should be looking at.
Or he's got people with deep knowledge of these agencies and organizations that need to be taken apart. You know, the purpose, if I'm understanding the purpose of the next Trump term, it's not to figure out how to make all of these agencies run better. It's in many cases to simply eliminate them.
Yes.
And so if we're going to take these things down responsibly, and maybe we'll get some of that Doge article or that op-ed that Elon and Vivek wrote over the course of this week, you know, a lot of what they're talking about, this dismantling, is a process that we're going to have cover stories with the entire Doge operation. But at the end of the day, these agencies shouldn't be doing most of the things that they are ostensibly doing. They are really just wasting money and implementing the global regime agenda, which makes them actually adversarial. We don't want them run a little better. We want someone to get in there, capture all that information, figure out where all the problems are, what needs to be removed, what needs to be saved, if anything, and then begin that that reduction in size and scope.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like Trump's second term begins once I think we get down to the reduced size of government. Like we get rid of all those agencies. That's when we can start like the real, that's when the government has been reconstituted, as we've been putting it in devolution terms. That's when the next phase like truly begins. We're in like this interim where the people putting in place now, the 18-month period before the celebration that they're planning for July 2026 or whatever, they're going to destroy the government even further. It's already been destroyed. They're going to get rid of all the fat, and then we're going to come back as a lean machine after that. And this ties into the next two articles, actually, the one that you talked about and the transition thing. But if you want to keep talking on this, we can.
Let's just take another second and use the Surgeon General person as an example, right? I don't have anything wrong with this woman. Apparently, her sister is married to Mike Waltz. One of you guys said that before we got started here. And that on its own is interesting. But the Surgeon General is not a position required by the Constitution. It's part of like the public health commissioned corps. Like that's not something that we need to keep around. So, and there's also nothing that the Surgeon General can tell us to do that we actually have to do. There's not really a point to have these positions. And so if the person supports censorship and lockdowns and vaccines, wonderful, put that person there, have the public take the responsibility for saying, look at all the things this woman has said. No one should ever listen to this person. That's a good thing. We should take that oppositional relationship with our government instead of applauding the TV every time we hear that there's like a good pick for the fantasy team.
Yeah, here's Mike Waltz's wife, Julia Neshawat. I think she was in Trump's, she's in Trump's admin back in 2020, 2021. And she Council of Foreign Relations, World Economic Forum, all sorts of stuff. Again, the NSA's wife, her sister is Jeanette, who is the now head of general surgery for the United States.
And since we're talking medicine, I mean, it's worth pointing out, I'll ask everyone, did any of you even know that Anthony Fauci existed before February 2020?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I never paid. I was aware of Francis Collins, but never Anthony Fauci.
I don't know who that is.
Well, Francis Collins was the head of the NIH, which oversees the NIAID, which is where Fauci was. Fauci basically ran the COVID pandemic scenario back in the 80s with AIDS. And a lot of people knew about that if they had paid a lot of attention to AIDS, but I wasn't one of those people.
A lot of people outing themselves as gay in the chat. Be like, oh yeah, I knew about AIDS back in the day.
I mean, could you imagine if Trump fired Fauci at the very beginning of COVID and didn't push him out to the center of the stage and say, hey, dude, show everybody exactly what you are. I mean, everybody now, like there is a like unanimous mandate now to get Anthony Fauci and prosecute him for the role that he played in the response to COVID. And the only reason that happened is because Donald Trump appointed him as the head of response for COVID and basically said, hey, man, this is your baby. I want you to take, like, you're in control. I want you to take control of it. And it was Trump doing that, putting him in that position, that then enabled the mandate to form to go after Fauci. And that's its own thread that I think gets pulled on at some point and unravels. So, there's a lot of precedent here for Trump putting people into positions that ostensibly, if you were to look in their background, you'd be like, this is not a guy that we should be trusting. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the point. So I'm not at all alarmed when Trump does something like that. And, I continue to say, I think Trump's superpower is getting everybody, friend or foe, to consistently think that they're smarter than he is. And everyone's like, oh, I love Donald Trump, but man, like, why does he keep doing this? Why does he keep making these mistakes? And
But part of it too, on the flip side of that, was had he fired Fauci, he probably would have been impeached. And to those in the chat, butthurt about my AIDS joke, no pun intended, I apologize. Didn't mean to upset everybody.
Wow.
Well played, sir.
Nailed it.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like he does this for a lot of reasons. We'll never understand why, but that doesn't remove our ability and necessity to critically think about every single one of these things.
Well, and the other thing is, if we are in the process of seeing the government dismantled and many of these pieces removed, think about what it would look like if we weren't getting any of this public story and the display of corruption. It would look like Trump is actually trying to seize power from all these agencies. He's removing all of the experts, all of the scientists, all of the career justice officials, et cetera. You can just go right on down the line at every branch of the federal government, all under Trump's purview as the executive, by the way. But the way the media would be able to sell that narrative without these cover stories, I don't know, man. I don't think that would ever be possible to actually dismantle things.
Yeah. He just needs to go through with it. Like if he's using these people as ops to like highlight something, we don't have any more time to waste. Like we need to start seeing some band-aids being ripped off here in short order. So maybe this Besson guy is a good pick, or maybe, some of these positions aren't even going to exist. Like he's appointing, like you said, the general surgeon. Maybe that position won't even exist in government in 6 months or a year, which is totally cool. But we don't know that for sure.
He appointed a WWE character to be the Secretary of Education. She also happened to have been like the president of the WWE and, was the one who put Trump in the WWE and then put him in the Hall of Fame. That would be Linda McMahon.
Yeah. Wasn't there something else she was connected to? I feel like we've talked about her on the DPH before, and I don't remember why. Oh, she was the administrator of the Small Business Administration.
Yeah, so she was in the first administration. She came out at the RNC, gave a 4-minute speech where she talked about how the highest ratings in the history of the WWE was when Trump was on screen. And then about 2 hours later, Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, came out and went in and out of character. He was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the kayfabe, and then I'm going to come out and be like, hey, man, that was kayfabe. My name's actually Terry Bollea. I've known Trump for a long time. They met at WrestleMania 4, which was hosted at the Trump Casino in Atlantic City. That was the casino that Trump built exclusively for the FBI to run operations against the mob and bring them down. And that was where Trump met Hulk Hogan. So there's just a lot of, it's really hard for me to look at all this stuff and just not think that there's just layers and layers and layers of really, really good storytelling that's being hashed out here.
Okay, check this out. America First Policy Institute from Devolution Part 13. If you go to right here, McMahon, she was the chair of the board for the America First Policy Institute, along with Larry Kudlow. And then she chaired the second transition team.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he put because she is a WWE character. She was like a character in the program, in the soap opera. The fact that he put a WWE character as, and that's no disrespect to her. She seems like a badass and obviously ran a really, really good company to take it to the levels that it achieved. as the in the position of an agency that he's already said multiple times over he's going to dismantle. He's going to abolish the Department of Education, and he's tasking her with that. He's like, it's your job to tear this thing to the ground and basically send it all back to the states. I don't think that that's a coincidence. Like, to me, it just seems like, you know, the soap opera that we call politics, that's been in existence for generations. Trump has taken over as executive producer, and he's turning it into a WWE program.
Yeah, and these top 4 people here, all names we've talked about. I guess maybe not Kudlow so much, but this is interesting. Pam Bondi. Okay, now you can get into your Pam Bondi point, Ghost.
Yeah, so the attack vector now on Pam Bondi is that she is a former lobbyist for the Qatar government, and one of the things that she worked on apparently was their
hold on, Ghost. Keith Kellogg's on here. That's Jimmy Russell News. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
So is Doug Collins, by the way, who was appointed. So was Scott Turner,
John Ratcliffe.
Yeah, man. I mean, if Trump had an administration during, same thing with Zeldin. If Trump had an administration over the last 4 years, there it is right here, the America First Policy Institute. And of course, what else would it be?
Yeah.
So the attack vector on Pam Bondi is that from the MSM and from other citizen journalists who were trying to pick this apart, which is good to pick this stuff apart, is that she was a lobbyist for the Qatari government, and specifically what she worked on was Qatar's image as it relates to like human rights, because they have a thing called the kafala system, which is basically when you go to work there as a migrant worker, you become basically a piece of property for your under your employer, and you turn into like an indentured servant. It doesn't seem that great of a system. I'm not too familiar with it, but that was what she was working on. And I don't exactly know the details of what she was doing and what her role was. But if the net effect of all that is that we're going to start talking about the influence of foreign lobbies in our government and specifically Congress, that seems like a fantastic conversation. Like, let's open that can of worms, dump them out on the table, and pick through them and like look at it all. Like, I would love to have that conversation about foreign lobbies negatively influencing our government. And I just think that's something, it's a boomerang. It's going to come around in the worst possible way and hit these people in the mouth.
Yeah, I see. The Last Refuge, I think that's his name, on Twitter, having an absolute meltdown about Pam Bondi because of her role in the Zimmerman. Who's the kid who got killed in Florida?
Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, he's lost his mind. Last Refuge over Pam Bondi, which I think, if for no reason but that, I'm sold on Pam Bondi.
She seems like a badass. Good, yeah, she seems like a badass, and she stood by Trump with the stolen election stuff. She stood by Trump with the impeachment. She's had his back at like the worst possible moments when everyone else like abandoned him. So yeah, man. I mean, I think she seems like a badass, and she seems like a loyalist. And right now, what I really want, Chris and I talked about this on Daily a few weeks ago, but what I really want are Trump loyalists.
Yep, totally agree. With aspirations for, being the next generation of the MAGA movement, because then not only are they going to be loyal, but they're not going to betray him, because if they do, they'll betray the party. Like, that's, some people could betray Trump in the short term, thinking they'll have a life after Trump, but that can't be. Do you guys know if this Jill Holman is Tom Homan's wife by chance?
Let me find out.
I can't find anything online. So I don't know if anybody knows. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, this AFPI is it's pretty a lot of big names, a lot of names we've talked about a lot.
Tom Homan's wife is named Elizabeth.
Okay. And Jill is not short for Elizabeth, so that must not be connected. Are you sure it's not Jill Elizabeth?
I'm not sure of anything.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we should get into that transition article. Before we do, I want to quick read our final sponsor of tonight's show. Let me figure out who that is again. All right. 1 second. Let me get this pulled up. So our good friends over at CB Distillery. Let me guess, guys, your medicine cabinet is crammed with stuff that does not work. You still aren't sleeping, you still hurt, and you're still stressed out. It's how it was for me. So I cleared out my cabinet and reset my health with CBD from CB Distillery. It's been a real game changer. CB Distillery's targeted formulations are made from the highest quality clean ingredients. No fluff, no fillers, just pure effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health. In 2 non-clinical surveys, 81% of customers experienced more calm. 80% said CBD helped with pain after physical activity. An impressive 90% said they slept better with CBD. If you struggle with a health concern and you still haven't found relief, make the change like I did to CB Distillery. With over 2 million customers and a solid 100% money-back guarantee, CB Distillery is the source you can trust. You can get a 20% discount to get you started. Visit cbdistillery.com and use promo code JON for 20% off. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code JON. All right. So this article, and this will pair really well with that Doge article, I think. But let's start with this. And this is a little interesting. If you guys remember right before the election on a Saturday Power, I think it was the last Saturday before the election, we went over the Electoral Count Reform Act, and right after that was the Transition Reform something. And in there, they talk a lot about the GSA being the one who determines who the next president is. And if no candidate concedes, it's possible that you could have multiple, candidates competing at once. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things there, but it was focused on the GSA, the General Services Administration. And this article goes through Trump's current transition now and how basically they're giving a big middle finger to the GSA. And I think it's great. But there's a lot of interesting things in here. So I'll read through this, Chris.
Yeah, cool. But we'll go off mine because I have a lot of it highlighted.
Yeah, so I'm just going to, you'll scroll. And so I know I'm going to read off mine because I have bigger print over here. But if I'm reading something not highlighted, let me know.
Cool. This is the Washington Post. Trump ignores transition rules. It's a hostile takeover, ally says. This is from what? Tuesday, Wednesday? Tuesday.
Yes, Tuesday, I think. Okay, 1,000 miles from the austere buildings where Washington runs, Donald Trump's transition team in his Mar-a-Lago resort has begun what a close ally calls a hostile takeover of the federal government. By the way, did you guys see everybody freaking the fuck out on, was it Thursday, over the 2 ambulances leaving Mar-a-Lago?
Oh, yeah.
So that was so retarded.
Man, I love that paragraph that they just wrote. Not to detract from that. They make it out like Donald Trump is holed up at his evil lair with all his henchmen, like plotting how to take over the government.
I mean, hey, I'm okay with it. It's the Winter White House.
Yeah.
So why not? Yeah, anyway. You're absolutely right. Since his victory, Trump has ignored many of the rules and practices intended to guide a seamless transfer of power and hand over the oversight of 2.2 million federal employees. Instead, the president-elect, who has pledged to fire thousands of civil servants and slash billions of dollars in spending, has so far almost fully cut out the government agencies his predecessors have relied on to take charge of the federal government. That's kind of funny, too. Trump ran on like getting rid of government agencies that aren't needed, and he's proving right now this GSA is not needed for any of the transition process.
That's funny, yeah.
And the article is highlighting it. Trump has yet to collaborate with the GSA, which is tasked with the complex work of handing over control of hundreds of agencies because he has not turned in required pledges to follow ethics rules. His transition teams have yet to set foot inside a single federal office. So
it's almost like that. It's almost like that layer of the government, which I now just refer to as the false reality layer, that's kind of stacked on top of our constitutional republic base layer, the legitimate form of government in this country. We have all of these agencies set up mostly by statute, according to Supreme Court precedent now. None of them are even allowed to do most of the stuff they do.
Talking about the Chevron deference?
Chevron, what was it? Jarkissi versus SEC that took away all of the internal agency courts that they have. Then there was West Virginia versus EPA that took away a lot of their ability to regulate anything on what they call the major questions doctrine. all that has to be done by Congress now. So if Trump and this, we'll get into this in the Doge article, but with the signing of a pen, like the signing of his signature, he can wipe out these agencies and most of their ability to do anything. And there's no way for them to reformulate themselves. I kind of imagine that what we're going to see is a bunch of them so-called privatize and be funded by the global philanthropists, as they probably are now. They'll just move outside of the federal government, push all the same influence, and then hope to take back over the government and then just reinsert themselves.
Yeah, what's interesting about this too, like a couple things. One, they're saying that they haven't started this collaboration yet because Trump hasn't turned in pledges. Like he hasn't said, "I promise I'll play nice." So does that mean that like they should be giving him the money and trying to collaborate with him, but they're not doing it because of those pledges are missing? Or they're a little vague about the real reason for this not happening. But the second thing here, if you think back to 2016 when Trump came in, the GSA was a big part of the problem. They were leaking shit left and right. They were interfering with a lot of his candidates he was trying to bring on, and the background checks and all this stuff. And who knows what else? Like, what if the GSA was partly responsible for some of the hacking, and the Secretary of State, the State Department was definitely involved in some of that stuff and getting rid of Flynn? Like, the transition last time basically killed Trump's presidency in a lot of ways before it even started. And so Trump's like, fuck that. I'm not doing any of that this time. And they're kind of throwing a fit about it.
Can I ask a question?
I'll allow it.
You might still be reading, Chris, but I'm just curious because I haven't had a chance to go through this article. Is the senior executive service mentioned in this at all?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay, just curious because that
would be very interesting.
Yeah, because that's like the keystone is like their symbol, and obviously that's like a phrase that's repeated throughout the Q drops. But they're also, as I understand it, represents like the deep state of the State Department is the senior executive service.
Yeah, I don't think it's mentioned in this article, but that's a great point.
And I'm looking at it right now, just like doing a little quick search, and it looks like the SES is involved in like the president, like work, like operating right underneath the president. So I'd be curious how they tie into this. But
yeah, well, I mean, they're basically talking about some of these, like they're talking about the SES, but they're not naming it directly here with some of the stuff they're mentioning here. In calls with foreign heads of state, Trump has cut out the State Department, its secure lines, and its official interpreters. Crazy.
It's amazing. He's not able to get a secure line with the other world leaders, apparently. And I guess he hasn't been for the last few years.
Well, the thing is, by
the State Departments,
by cutting out the State Department, the lines are much more secure now.
Yeah.
As his team considers hundreds of potential appointees for key jobs, he's so far declined to let the FBI check for potential red flags and security threats to guard against espionage, instead relying on private campaign lawyers for some appointees and doing no vetting at all for others. Trump's transition team is considering moving on his first day in office to give those appointees blanket security clearances, according to people familiar with the discussions who spoke on the condition of anonymity to disclose private conversations. Those same people, the source of every story. At the root of this unprecedented approach, say those close to Trump's transition, is an abiding distrust and resentment of federal agencies that the president-elect blames for blocking his agenda in his first term, leaking his plans to the press, and later sharing his documents with investigators and bringing criminal charges against him.
You got to love how they like mention that halfway down. They're like, Trump's being irresponsible, not working with these people. And he's for some reason doesn't trust them.
Right. It's crazy. Some of these stories, I can't believe they actually like put them to paper.
Oh. For
Trump, who campaigned on radically reshaping the federal government by moving entire departments out of Washington, closing others, and replacing scores of civil servants with political loyalists, fulfillment of that vision begins with a privately run transition from Palm Beach and nearby offices. So basically sticking to exactly what he campaigned on.
Yeah. I mean, they act like there's some mystery to this.
Right. Many of the president-elect's moves to skirt official transition policies are within the law, experts said, or at least are subject to laws that are not regularly enforced.
Imagine thinking that it's like an advertisement for our democracy to to be going off about how Donald Trump won't go along with any of these policies. They're making it like this is some sort of scandal, even though none of them are required by law. If you are doing things and signing things and it's not required by the law and it's not any benefit to you, you would have to be insane. You're basically only opening yourself to liability for no benefit at all.
Yeah, and I think the one law that they're talking about not regularly enforced, and they mention it later, but it's the Logan Act, which is basically what they went after Flynn for. But I don't know if you have it highlighted or not, but I figured I'd mention that just in case.
I think I do.
But his transition alarms some officials who say the president-elect is weakening transparency, eroding checks and balances, and risking national security. That fascist Trump. Eric Rubin, a former ambassador to Bulgaria who led the American Foreign Service Association before his retirement last year, called the approach a massive crossing of the unwritten lines that have prevailed in presidential transitions for 140 years. He acknowledged that Trump is able to take advantage of the reality that so much in our system is not written. What?
Like okay. So to me, this was amazing because this is just after the Civil War era, after the Reconstruction Amendments were forced into place. And once court precedent began incorporating the Reconstruction Amendments to set all of the precedent that we're still living under now. So he doesn't go back all the way to the founding of the country, only just to that era, the last 140 years. And then he essentially says, you know, I talk about that George Fletcher book, Our Secret Constitution, and I say that that's kind of when they put that second layer on our democracy layer over our constitutional republic. So he's talking about that exact time period. And then he says that so much in our system is not written. Most of what they do is like my norms, my institutions. Remember how the first transition was all about how Trump was breaking the norms and threatening the institutions? That is the government they run. That is not our real government.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Absolutely crazy. Keep going down. Let's see which one you got highlighted next. To date, he has not signed memorandums of understanding that include a robust ethics pledge from the transition staff, and in a new provision added by Congress after ethical issues dodged by Trump, the first Trump administration, from the president-elect himself, who must delineate how he would avoid his own conflicts of interest. It's an interesting one that they point out there.
Right.
But the White House had not received them as of this week, according to an official with the Office of Management and Budget. The holdup, according to people close to the process, is the conflict of interest provision for Trump. I don't believe that, but it's like them trying to call him corrupt or something in some way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Trump's team says that staffers have signed their own ethics code and conflict of interest pledge, although those documents do not cover Trump or meet the requirements of the Presidential Transition Act. Transition officials said they continued to constructively engage with the Biden administration, but have not provided details of the negotiations. Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris signed the official agreements and made them public before taking office. Trump is not required by law to do the same, but the repercussions are emerging. So stupid. Trump's transition teams cannot participate in national security briefings, enter federal agencies, or speak with employees, and can't receive formal briefings about ongoing operations and projects. Trump has begun
they want any of that
or need it.
Yeah.
Trump has begun receiving intelligence briefings. The transition team cannot use secure federal email servers to communicate. A particular concern, security experts said, after the Trump campaign was hacked by Iran. Interesting they don't mention Clinton and her private email stuff there, because that was of much more concern. It is also unclear if Trump plans to require his nominees to submit a separate ethics reviews required by the Office of Government Ethics. If not, once his appointees are in the job, the office will be unable to ensure they divest from companies or other entities to avoid potential conflicts. The day after Trump won the election, congratulatory calls began pouring in from world leaders, from the French President Emmanuel Macron to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, in a traditional post-election day ritual. However, Trump did not include State Department officials or U.S. government interpreters on the line, according to government and transition officials.
Imagine that. I mean, that is such a damning piece of information about how corrupted the State Department has been.
Well,
Like, they're just listing ways that they could attempt to get Trump. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm thinking of the calls that Trump has had leaked with foreign leaders. Like, if the State Department's listening in, you have an Alexander Vindman in there who's going to be like, "Oh, Trump did a quid pro quo again," and you have this whole government scandal before he even takes office. Like, what would incentivize Trump to participate in any of this stuff that's not even required?
I have an extremely relevant anecdote, but we won't get to it until after we wrap this article up.
Well, then it must not be that relevant.
No, it'll just take us to the next topic. So we might as well finish the article and discussion first.
Okay, I do want to point this out real quick before we keep reading. One of the last executive orders that Trump issued before leaving office, and it might have even been the last one, it came on January 19th of 2021. I just want to share my screen real quick. It was the revocation of Executive Order 13770, which was ethics commitments by executive branch employees. It's hereby revoked. So that's interesting. Just the article we're reading made me think of this, but I haven't dug into it at all. So I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah, that's real interesting. I wonder what that Trump EO says.
Yeah. I mean, I could find it. The one that he revoked?
The one that quote unquote Biden revoked.
No, Trump revoked it.
Doesn't that say 125/2021?
Well, it was, that's when it got published to the Federal Register here at the top. It got published to the Federal Register on 125, but it was actually written and signed on January 19th
of 2021. Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Trump did it, and this is
so he's revoking his own prior executive order.
He was revoking the ethics pledge required by his executive branch employees or appointees that what they all signed on. I mean, this is January 28th, 2017. So
right.
This sounds like the ethics commitment that they're talking about in this article. And Trump revoked it before leaving office. So anyway, we can dig into that more offline and maybe talk about it again later on. Back to this article. Where are we at? Trump is not okay. A president-elect is prohibited by the 1799 Logan Act from negotiating foreign policy until he's sworn in, but the statute has rarely, if ever, been enforced. Government officials also traditionally rely on state to help create an official record of such conversations in case disputes arise over what was said.
I mean, isn't that unbelievable how they talked about Trump and members of the Trump administration, like potentially violating the Logan Act? Isn't that what they went after General Flynn for? And they are, and then we have the State Department creating the official record of all of these conversations so that at all times they can know if the incoming administration is shifting State Department policy. It's incredible looking back from this perspective, the way they are describing this in relation to what we saw, the subversions through that first Trump transition.
Ghost, how many times has Trump talked to foreign leaders, just in the past year? It's got to be
so many times. I mean, I think he's met face to face with pretty much every single one that I can think of, except for, I mean, he hasn't met face to face with MBS, Xi, or Putin, but he's spoken to MBS. Elon apparently was allegedly met with the Iranian UN envoy last week, which was hilarious, at the exact same time that Saudi was hosting their prime minister.
And Elon's been talking to Putin.
Yeah, Elon apparently has been talking to Putin. He's talking to Xi.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, that's basically been the whole storyline, is that these guys are all flying into Mar-a-Lago and kissing the ring while Biden is ostensibly president.
And what's interesting about that, though, the reason I brought it up is all those times it was public that Trump was meeting or talking to these people.
Mm-hmm.
They never wrote about the Logan Act or it being prohibited. But now that he's the one and it's part of the transition thing, why isn't the State Department in on these calls? Why didn't they make an issue or a point of that back then?
and the great lengths they went to like create these stupid misdemeanors they charged him with. You'd think the Logan Act thing would have been like low-hanging fruit for them. I mean, Ken Con and I talk about this many times on Badlands Daily, but why haven't they tried to go after him for the Logan Act in any of those instances?
Yeah.
I have an answer.
I think we all do.
Yeah, but I don't know if this article, if we're still going through the article, let's continue. But otherwise, I have a very, very interesting story to share on that.
Yeah. I promise we'll get to it. This article is so incredible that I think it's worth it.
No, for sure. Keep going. It's fantastic.
Trump's transition team has also dispensed with the FBI's role in place since before World War II in performing the background checks that form the backbone of security clearances for political appointees. By law, these checks must be performed by federal employees, not private contractors with no agency oversight, to ensure that key decisions affecting public trust are made by accountable government officials, according to federal statute. I wonder what happens if Trump on day one just abolishes the FBI, and so there is no FBI to do background checks. Like, what are you going to do then, GSA?
Exactly. And just look at the interplay between these issues. There's actually no enforcement mechanism ultimately for a lot of what the bureaucratic and deep state actually do because it's not constitutional.
That's the key point here. Like, if Trump doesn't do any of these things that are just the norm and federal statute, whatever, like all these things, are they going to say he just can't be president? Like, are they going to stop him from doing what he's going to do? No.
They're just trying to maintain these agencies and organizations so that they can reinsert them into whatever government they will claim comes next after they try to, destroy the world or something. But Trump played nice with all these agencies in the first term, and he pretended that they were all legitimate. He had people spend time there, learned everything he could. Now he just doesn't care anymore. They can't do anything. He's treating them as though they don't exist. And that's because in an important way, they don't.
Yeah. And that's a good mindset to have too, when we look at these cabinet appointments that Trump's making, because if he has that mindset about this right here and the transition process and all the things there, he very likely has the same mindset when it comes to some of these cabinets, which, like you said earlier, if he's calling on abolishing the Department of Education, does it really matter who the Secretary of Education is? Probably not.
Not at all. Yeah.
The FBI would normally have begun vetting a president-elect's transition team before Election Day, as well as his choices for cabinet positions and other top staff jobs. Thus far, Trump has left the job of vetting candidates to Stanley Woodward, a Palm Beach lawyer on his campaign who has represented several J6 rioters and Trump associates caught up in the classified documents case, according to transition staff who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the decision. I fucking love when they do that.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. Also, like, it's not like the FBI can't figure out who any of these people are and vet them themselves. Like, there's no official process that prevents the FBI from doing research on any of these people.
Well, the other thing about that is then what are they doing when they're meeting all these people? Are they leveraging and compromising people on their way into government so that each and every person that enters the federal government is fully under control at the time they do? I mean, this shit is crazy, man. There's levels to this article, man. And by the way, the people speaking on the condition of anonymity within the Trump transition, like, when the media reports that someone is privy to a private conversation but wants to speak to the media on the condition of anonymity, either that is the most dishonest person in the entire world. They're in one meeting pretending to be honest and trustworthy, and then they immediately turn to the media and say, hey, I'm going to tell you what I was just sworn not to say, but believe me and tell your readers about it. Like, that's either the biggest bullshit ever, or they're being directed to go leak information without any, and remove the ties to it.
Well, there's a third option here, which is just, it's these agencies, the FBI and the left and the people actually freaking out, which it sounds like that's the perspective this article is coming from. They're just making this all up and saying, like, well, it's somebody from within Trump's campaign saying this stuff, but it doesn't have to be at all. Like, this is all from the perspective of the left and why all these things are bad. You know what I mean? So there may not be any leaks at all. It could be most of the time, like I would say 99% of the time when I see the people familiar with the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they don't want to whatever, I almost immediately say that's bullshit, like totally made up.
I have a pet theory on this.
Let's hear it.
That Trump has Boris Epstein like leaking stuff to the public on purpose, leaking stuff to the media on purpose all the time, and that's what all that tickle fighting in the background is always about.
I don't even. Isn't he that Russian?
Yeah, he's an attorney. He used to be one of Trump's comms guys on CNN, He did a bunch of legal work on the 2020 election cases. He used to be on War Room basically every day, and he's still, I guess, somewhat close to Trump after all these years.
I think he was one of the ones indicted for the Arizona elector scheme or whatever.
I think so.
He's also the one that him and like the slap tickle fight. Him and Elon have been fighting in the headlines lately.
Yep.
Like disagreeing over the cabinet picks, which I think Chris could just be a narrative to fuel the interest in the cabinet picks and get people to dig into them like we're supposed to be doing.
Sure, and could give legitimacy to Epstein.
Yeah, Gordon, you're definitely right. It could be that. I think it's also like Elon providing distance for Boris so that he can keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Narrative shielding.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a good phrase. I'm going to trademark that phrase. I've never heard it said before.
You should.
Good point. Yeah.
I think it's got a real future. I can imagine really long articles being written about it.
I just coined it, guys. Trump has also, I wonder if he's in the chat. I saw him earlier. By the way, we're subtly making fun of burning bread for those not aware of what that
he's stalking in the tall grass.
Yeah. Trump has also not said if he would allow the Defense Department to conduct a separate series of security checks on staffers once he's in office to allow agencies to grant various levels of security clearances. Was he asked? Like, it doesn't say if they asked him. They just say Trump has not said it.
Mm-hmm. It seems like they want someone to be able to fully investigate everyone who's coming in.
They don't like that Trump is doing this all on his own, and they don't have the GSA to oversee and essentially spy and dictate how this transition is run.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's clearly upsetting to them. The Senate could also demand an FBI background check before considering a nominee who requires confirmation.
So just somebody has to be able to do it. John, I said on my show the other day, it seems like they're trying to get information in every one of these complaints. It is their inability to get inside information and access. And it just kind of lines up with stuff we've talked about. Sorry, I don't know what happened to my voice there. Like with the peds and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. That's a great point. That's a really great point. Getting the Senate to, it's like they're begging the Senate. The Senate could do it for us. The Senate, can you please make him do it? Biden White House officials have encouraged Trump to sign an agreement with the Justice Department that would allow for FBI background checks, temporary security clearances, and other standard steps to begin the handoff of power at all levels of government. So Biden's on board with this whole thing. It's like everybody that you can think of is pleading with Trump to just sign these pledges. A justice spokesperson said the department was committed to an orderly transfer of power and that discussions about signing a memorandum of understanding, as past presidents-elects have done, remains ongoing. We are prepared to deliver briefings to the transition team on our operations and responsibilities, and we stand ready to process requests for security clearances for those who will need access to national security information, the spokesperson said.
And I thought it was just amazing, the security clearances, as though they are such a big deal. Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he is the plenary authority on classification. So why wouldn't he be the one who has full authority to determine security clearances? And I believe by law he is. So why would he need these people? And this is just telling us Donald Trump doesn't use these agencies anymore.
Well, and on top of that, let's just go back, like strip away all the stuff that we think is going on behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And let's just say that narrative level, he's coming in and he's just not wanting to do all this stuff. But the reason they're saying is like, we're prepared to tell him how, the DOJ works and operates, like what the responsibility. It's his second term, you mofos. Like he already knows all this stuff.
Yeah.
He doesn't need he doesn't need to be told how the DOJ operates and what the responsibilities of the DOJ are. He gets it all.
I want Trump to come in there and tell them how it's going to operate from now on. Like that, like
100%.
they seem to misunderstand the situation here.
Oh, clearly. They're in denial. Recess appointments do not serve full presidential terms, and other presidents in both parties have made them on occasion. But Trump's early line in the sand signaled that he could make these appointments regular practice, a threat that did not seem theoretical last week when some planned nominees with extreme views came under scrutiny by Senate Republicans.
It's almost like the Senate doesn't exist.
Yeah. Except they managed to get Gates out of there, or so we're told.
Totally.
By the way, guys, hit that thumbs up if you're watching. We got 13,000 watching here and about another 1,000 on Twitter and between Twitter and YouTube. So appreciate that. Hit that thumbs up. And here at the end, even before he is sworn in for a second term, Trump told House Republicans he addressed on Capitol Hill last week that he might need their help to bypass the Constitution to allow him to run for a third term. The crowd laughed, taking the remark as a joke. I thought they said earlier he wasn't able to get into like any of the buildings.
Well, I think the meeting was off-site, and he gave a speech and stuff. There was video from that meeting. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe it was from Joe Biden's fake White House down the street.
I mean, how much of what's going on in Washington, D.C. is real anymore?
Yeah. The next day, one House Democrat raced to block a Trump 3.0, introducing a resolution that reaffirms support for the Constitution's 2-term limit for presidents, even if the terms are not consecutive.
It's kind of amazing. They're just laying it all out there. And by the way, what are the chances that Trump just never goes back to the White House and just operates from Mar-a-Lago the whole time?
Oh, that'd be amazing. I kind of hope he does. Like, why does he need to be at the White House to do any of that business?
Yeah. And why would he change what he's been doing the last 4 years? He's got like his system. He knows like what time of day he takes his walks and where,
Yeah.
Why would he want to change?
Call it the winter White House. Okay, Ghost, what you got?
Okay, so if we go back 8 years ago, right after Trump won in November 2016, one of Trump's top advisors, a guy one of his top advisors from his campaign, a guy named Tom Barak, who he's been very close with for 40 years. He's a Lebanese American real estate tycoon. He goes to Trump and he says, "Look, Jared, I need to introduce Jared to this guy in Saudi Arabia who's the defense minister, and I think he's going to be a big deal one day, and they should become friends." He's talking about MBS. So Kushner in December of 2016, Kushner and MBS start texting each other, and they're using WhatsApp, which is like the encrypted, text messaging.
Encrypted.
App. Yeah. And so the GSA finds out about this, and they freak out. Like, they are super pissed, and they're like, "Look, dude, we're the GSA. Okay, I don't know if you've heard of us, but we're the GSA. We're kind of a big deal. Any communications with a foreign entity has to go through us. You have to use official channels. You can't have your own thing happening." And Jared's like, yeah. I'm super sorry. Like, we'll fix that. Keeps doing it. Keeps texting with MBS. They start texting each other, and obviously, like, his stuff's getting hacked because this is all getting leaked out that these text messages were happening. They start texting each other using only emojis, not even using words. They were just texting each other emojis. And the guys at the GSA are pulling their hair out because they're like, what do these emojis mean? What are they talking about? Like, what are they plotting? And
what is the shit emoji for?
Yeah. And so Ben Hubbard, who is the CIA prostitute who works for the New York Times, and his like their number one hitman when it comes to writing mean stories about MBS, is just churning out all of this CIA propaganda about this storyline and about like these memes or I'm sorry, these emojis and this text conversation, and how nefarious it is that Jared Kushner and this Saudi crown prince or the Saudi prince, because he wasn't the crown prince yet, are like talking to each other on like not using official channels. They're subverting the State Department. They're going around the CIA. They're going around the GSA. And so like reading through that article, I was just thinking about that the whole time, is that the whole time the GSA is screaming at Jared Kushner to follow the rules. And Jared Kushner is giving him like lip service and then turning around and just continues to text with MBS. And then in March of 2017 is when they set up the official channel through the State Department. And that's when they're like, all right, we're going to come visit on May 20th.
Is this video you got pulled up here?
Well, so this video, Tom Barack, I want to show you this video, and then I want to show you his Wikipedia, because this is going to get some jimmies rustled. This is from a few days ago. He goes on Bloomberg, and I think it's worth listening to the first minute. This is the guy I just described who put Kushner in touch with MBS.
Tom, it's great to have you here back at Bloomberg.
So good to be with you. It's back to the future a bit.
Tom, it's worth reminding everybody a little bit about your relationship with the president-elect.
Is this prior to 2017, or is this like recently?
No, this is from like a few days ago.
Okay.
Yep.
Joe just told us, and he's absolutely right, of course, that you were chairman of the inauguration back in 2016. You were, of course, then President Trump's biggest fundraiser at the time. You and he go back more than 40 years.
Wow.
It gives you unique insights into the man, and more importantly, what Trump 2.0 is going to be like. One of the things that people want to know most is how Trump 2.0 is going to be different from Trump 1.0. Tell us.
So first of all, the insight into the man going back 40 years is, I've learned one thing: trust his instincts. And I think what the country now has decided is that all the rhetoric, all the confusion, all the drama around how it may be presented, this is not only one of the greatest political athletes that we've ever seen, he's just one of the greatest athletes. But the question I think on what 2.0 is it's going to be hopeful, phenomenal, and much better, I think, than even the other side, in fear of what might be coming, will accept. Why? Because think about it, in 2016, we were together. We were having this conversation. You have a man who's one of the best builder, developers, financiers in the world, a reality talk show host for 13 years on The Apprentice, zero political experience, zero Washington experience, right? In those, if you had to go out of the 212 area code in those days, it was a flurry. Comes to Washington, putting a team together, right? We all thought we were putting the best team together. You had to find resources to do it. People were apprehensive of doing it. And just finding your way around DC was not.
So is the point that he's no longer a rookie in the job and he knows what he's doing?
Well, not only is he not a rookie, he did a great job. And if you think of what happened, we went from a Muslim ban to no ISIS. We go to a great economy in the world. We have no problems with Mexico at the time. Immigration is under control. Healthcare, security, housing, all of those things seem to be better. 4 years then of being attacked physically, legally, socially, and reflecting on all of the other things. So in that reflection of 4 years, got him ready to say, if I have the opportunity and the stewardship to have another 4 years and really create my legacy, I now know how to do it. And I know what the people are that I need, and I know the wiring of the plumbing in the system.
So let's.
Yeah. So, and if I kept playing it, I could keep playing it. He makes some really kind of funny remarks about Merrick Garland, where he says, Merrick Garland's not corrupt, by the way. The system's corrupt and the people he's working for are corrupt, but he's not corrupt, which I was like, okay, that's weird that he said that.
Similar to what Trump said about Merrick Garland back in the day.
Exactly. And I mean, a lot of the stuff he lays out, like in the rest of like the 11-minute clip, is, you know, it feels a little bit of like an olive branch. Like he's kind of trying to say, all right, man, we're not going to come in here and, you know, make enemies or be, you know, he's kind of being a little diplomatic here. So we don't need to listen to all that. But I do want to direct your attention to his Wikipedia page, because I think this is where you're going to be like, what the hell? All right. So he's the founder of Colony Capital. It's a real estate investment trust. And, Lebanese American, as I said. Okay. So back in 1972, he worked for President Nixon's personal lawyer. You got to think, like I speculate whether he's the guy who put Trump in touch with Nixon, because if you recall, Trump has talked about how he reached out to Nixon, they became friends, they exchanged over 200 like handwritten letters. Nixon was a political outsider. That's a big reason that Watergate happened and he was, kind of railroaded, was because he wouldn't go along with a lot of the stuff they wanted them to do. And so you got to wonder if Trump picked his brain, because that's what Trump talks about doing all the time, is going to people who failed or people who, had hardship and picking their brain to figure out why they failed in order to like learn from their failures and avoid them. So you have to wonder if he's the one who put him in touch with Nixon. It was working for this law firm that he got sent to Saudi Arabia, and he like meets the royal family. He becomes good friends with them. Through the royal family, he becomes friends with the Emiratis. He also becomes friends with the Qataris. And he forms all these relationships in the Middle East. In my opinion, like reading through all this, like not the Wikipedia, but reading through like other research on Tom Barack, I think he's actually the one who probably, with MBS and Jared Kushner, put the Abraham Accords together. That's what it seems very obvious to me. So looking at some of the stuff that he's tied to.
Well, hold on, before you go down, I noticed, scroll up just a little bit to the second paragraph of that early career.
Yeah.
The very last sentence, Barack says he became disillusioned with government service after he was required to testify before a congressional committee due to a gift Barack had paid to the purchaser of then Attorney General Edwin Meese's house. Edwin Meese has written some, I can't remember what the legal term is, in some of these cases against Trump.
The amicus brief.
Amicus briefs, yeah.
And I think it was the one about was it the one with the generals and the unlawful orders? Is that the one?
No, I think maybe I'll have to look this up, but I think he was the one who did the unconstitutionality of Jack Smith's appointment, which later was echoed by Clarence Thomas, and that was the reason Eileen Cannon used to dismiss Trump's classified document case.
I think you're exactly right.
I'm pretty sure Ed Meese was the first one to do it, or to talk about it, at least in the amicus brief. But continue.
Yeah, you're right.
Interesting. Well, okay, so Barack and Trump. Barack's the guy who sold Trump the Plaza Hotel. That's a pretty big deal. Also happens to be the setting of Home Alone 2. I gave that little rant about Home Alone and the game theory panel at GART. He also, talking about Barack, he purchased Neverland Ranch from the Michael Jackson estate after Jackson died. That to me feels a little bit like Signal when you think about the relationship between Michael Jackson and Donald Trump, the things Donald Trump has said about Michael Jackson, about him being innocent and him not being the guy that the media presents him as. Again, that just feels very, very signally to me. In 2010, Barack teams up with the Qataris right here. So he teams up with the Qatari Investment Authority, which is like their PIF, their public investment fund, and he purchases the film production company Miramax from Harvey Weinstein and his brother. He then, like in 2016, I think, to go work for the Trump campaign, he then sells his stake in Miramax to the Qataris. So the Qataris now completely own Miramax. And Chris, I don't know. I asked Burning Bright about this. I don't know like what kind of films Miramax has been producing since 2016. I'd be interested to know if it's like really woke stuff. Because if it is, I mean, the Qataris are the ones producing that, and they're like some of the most conservative, like backwards culture in the world. And it would kind of lean into that theory that Burning Bright has, that like the woke stuff has been accelerated in order to destroy it, like to self-destruct on the Hollywood front. If we back up,
it also says in 2010, just a couple paragraphs up from that he bought Jared Kushner's debt on his property on Fifth Avenue.
Yes. And so that's why I wanted to direct the attention, is that this is like the real signal to me, is that, Kushner buys this. This is the property, the 666 on Fifth Avenue. This is the one where everyone says, well, this is proof that Kushner is a black hat and that he's, whatever, like satanic. I don't read that at all. In 2008, he bought that property. His father around that time is indicted and thrown in prison by the deep state, as I understand it. And Kushner flies his jet to the prison every single weekend that his dad's in prison, which to me is a signal that he probably, you would think, carries a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about that. And, would be a reason why he would want to get even. And the reason why Kushner would kind of like thumb his nose at the GSA when they say, hey, you better be going through us to talk to MBS. So 2 years later, he gets into some, financial trouble. The real estate market is trash. And he's in debt. And so Trump calls Barack and says, hey, man, I need you to help out my daughter's boyfriend. He's in some trouble. And so Barack comes in and buys $70 million of the debt on that building. And so they now, as I understand it, they now co-own the building together. So there's a lot of other stuff.
This is super interesting. One thing I want to ask, is there any overlap between his purchase of these film companies and Steve Mnuchin and his video production stuff that he did?
Ooh, that would be a really, really good thing to run down. I would imagine that they had to at least have crossed paths. I mean, considering their backgrounds and their, this seems like those are two pretty big fish swimming around in a relatively small pond.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, keep going. I like where this is going.
So, it says right here that in 2011 he's listed as the one of the richest people in the world. But in 2012, so he's selling a soccer team to the Qatari investment fund. He's doing other deals with them with Miramax. And then when you look at what's happened with Qatar over the past 6 weeks, there was a big story that came out about Qatar doing something with Hamas. I forgot exactly what the storyline was, but early in that week, the Qatar emir, so he'd like the crown prince of Qatar, he was at Mar-a-Lago meeting with Trump. And so there are actually videos of Trump meeting with this guy. Tamim is his name. Back in 2017, when Trump goes and does a sword dance, Tamim is there because it's a big gathering of all these world leaders. Trump meets with him on the sidelines. They then meet again in July. And then Trump invites him to the White House in September of 2017. By that time, because May is when the sword dance happens. A month later in June, that's when King Salman takes the crown prince, who's one of the cousins, who's a CIA shill, tells him, you're not crown prince anymore. My son's the crown prince. The CIA shill gets arrested and is forced to serve out his prison term in like a really nice beach house in Jeddah. And then MBS immediately goes into this hardcore, like full court press against Qatar, backed by Trump, backed by the UAE, backed by Bahrain, which is like the little island nation in the Persian Gulf. And they said no Qatari ship could land at any port in the Persian Gulf or in Egypt. So you can't have any ships docking there. He also commissioned a request for proposal to contractors in the area. He wanted, because Qatar, John, is the peninsula that sticks out into the Persian Gulf. He wanted to dig a canal. He shuts down the border, like the land border with Saudi Arabia, and MBS wanted to dig a canal along like the whole border and turn it into an island. He went as far as like taking proposals from contractors and being like, I'm going to do this as a pure flex play. He does not end up doing it, but he's just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make your life as miserable as possible. And the reason he's doing it is because he says, Qatar, I know that the CIA is operating in like that's like a home base for them. And I know that they are running subversive terrorist operations across the Middle East from Doha. And so until you shut that down, this embargo is going to continue. Trump basically promises to me when he comes to visit him in September 2017, he says, nobody in the room is going to believe this, but you and I have actually known each other for a really long time. We're old friends. And we're going to figure this out. And I promise that this is like, I'm going to take care of all this. And so then Tamim goes and visits him, like whatever it was, 6 weeks ago. He then makes a big announcement about Hamas that week. As of right now, like about 5 days ago, I think it was 5 or 6 days ago, Tamim has expelled Hamas leadership from Qatar. So they have been exiled from Qatar now. They've been allowed to like live in penthouses, as like they're all billionaires. While
what's the TLDR like from this?
The TLDR basically is that Qatar, which has been a haven of the deep state. It's like where the British intelligence, Muslim Brotherhood, CIA, military industrial complex, all of them operate there. There's a whole like galaxy of NGOs that operate out of Qatar that are they're all run by former CIA agents, and they use those NGOs to fund everything. Qatar seems to have been I don't know if it's cleaned out, but at least the royal family that's running Qatar is working with MBS, working with the UAE, working with Iran, working with Putin. Whereas during the Trump administration, Qatar was like Trump and MBS were basically like Qatar is bad, and they are like on the outside looking in. So to me, it seems like a pretty big signal. Tom Barak was probably a critical part of that. And also, it's worth noting that because of that embargo, Qatar, who were enemies of Iran, had to pivot and become friends with Iran. I think that Tamim basically becomes like the conduit between Trump and Iran because he had to become friends with them in order to survive. To me, there's a lot of different elements that are playing out there, but it's very fascinating that we talk about we spent a lot of time talking about the GSA. Kushner and MBS are having this like back and forth, and the GSA is pulling their hair out, and then now you have Tamim and Qatar stepping in and kind of like subverting this whole Hamas Netanyahu thing.
Yeah, this is essentially what Trump has been doing these last 4 years with a lot of like everywhere, all over the world, and here. So it's definitely interesting. Ghost, I like it.
Yeah.
Anything else on this, Chris? You want to add anything?
The transition thing, no.
Or anything Ghost said?
No, I think that we went through some of that a little bit on Badlands Daily a week or so ago. Obviously, interesting stuff. I expect that connection will probably pay off, and we'll hear all those names again. As far as the transition thing goes, man, I did an episode in October, maybe 6 weeks ago, called No Transition. And I don't think there has to be a transition, man. Trump won in 2020. Joe Biden did not receive 81 million real lawful American votes. He was never properly certified. He was never properly inaugurated. We had a fake election. We've had a series of fake elections, and we're going to watch the public story as the government changes, however it needs to change, so that people can understand what's going on, and so that it all feels legitimate to people who have not paid much attention. But, this is one of the scenarios that you and I discussed probably when I first started doing Devolution Power Hour with you.
Mm-hmm.
We used to talk about what does the come down from all this look like. There's a chance, at least, that there will be no recognition whatsoever, and that there's going to be maybe a majority of people in this country who see us having a real election, Trump bringing this administration in, and all of these government agencies and pieces of government being taken apart just the way this story says. But it'll actually be what you described a few years ago and have researched and documented so thoroughly. That'll be happening. Everybody will be told it's the other thing, and it'll just be a matter of what people will ultimately choose to believe.
Yep. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I mean, if everything you just said there about what happened in 2020, like knowing that to be true and believing that to be true and believing something has been going on in the background, like, would you expect a narrative transition to take place any other way than basically skirting all norms possible? Probably not.
The only thing I could say is, I think that there's probably a scenario where the plan and this whole charade that we're watching becomes unnecessary because the people have finally figured it out. And I think that could have happened before as well, because we're just seeing this series of reruns over and over again. There's nothing that says it has to take this long. If they are waiting for a moment where they're sure that society is going to be stabilized and that people are going to accept this, return to our original form, or a more idealistic form. If people are okay with it because they understand it, that doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't have to be a result of this television show playing out for another 4 years or another 8 years or however long it goes, unless we're just doomed to have, one side or the other win a television show all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, if you want some signal on that, I like John, let's just the Tyson fight last week, the guy he was sitting next to and the role that he played in doing exactly what Chris just described, which is a quick transition, like a tear down of the government and a rebuild. I mean, the guy who was sitting next to Trump literally did that in Saudi Arabia 7 years ago.
Yeah.
That's
pretty notable.
Yeah. 9 years ago, Al Ramayua, who's the head of the PIF, he was sitting next to Trump at the Tyson fight. And I've told the story before, but in February or January 2015, when MBS's uncle died, the king of Saudi Arabia.
TLDR, bro. TLDR.
Yeah. So his dad becomes king. He puts him in charge. He brings 4 guys in the room and says, no one leaves until we figure out how to tear the whole government down and build it back up. 12 hours later, they had a plan. 10 days later, they had a brand new government built complete from scratch. That's February 2015. And that sets up the entire play for the Saudi purge. And the big thing that triggered all that was the fact that somebody had cooked the books for the PIF. And so they were hemorrhaging $100 billion a year. And by the end of 2017, the entire fund was supposed to be insolvent had they not fixed it. And so MBS put this guy, the guy who was sitting next to Trump at the Tyson fight, in charge of fixing the fund. He fixed it. He's now been wielding it ever since and basically going around the world and divesting out of oil, investing in everything else. And to me, that signal that the guy who helped tear down the Saudi government, build it back up, it sets up the whole thing for the Saudi purge. He's sitting next to Trump at the Tyson fight a week ago.
Not the Tyson fight, the UFC fight after.
Yeah. I'm sorry. The UFC fight. Yeah. The Jones fight where Elon's sitting on the other side. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Jones fight. You're right.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I think you have, is that the article you have right there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, between the 3 people, so this is him right here. So him, Trump, and Elon Musk sitting together is $1.2 trillion. It's
crazy.
Yeah. So
all right, let's quickly go through the Doge article from Elon and Vivek in the Journal. Do you have the highlights from that?
I didn't highlight this one because on my show I went through the whole thing. It's not terribly long. We don't have to go through all of it, but there are some cool points because they basically describe the ways that the system's going to be taken apart. And they kind of give it all away in the first paragraph there about how most of what the government does, it's not actually allowed to do.
Okay, Elon Musk and Vivek, the Doge plan to reform government following the Supreme Court's guidance will reverse a decades-long executive power grab. Yeah, I don't want to read through the whole thing, but
No, we don't have to.
We'll see how it goes. I'll give a few paragraphs to read. Our nation was founded on the basic idea that the people we elect run the government. That isn't how America functions today. Most legal edicts aren't laws enacted by Congress, but rules and regulations promulgated by unelected bureaucrats, tens of thousands of them each year. Most government enforcement decisions and discretionary expenditures aren't made by the democratically elected president or even his political appointees, but by millions of unelected, unappointed civil servants with government agencies who view themselves as immune from firing thanks to civil service protections. Go
ahead.
I was just going to read this next paragraph and let's talk about it.
That is a communist administrative state they just described. And we don't have real elections and the employees can't be fired. That means that no one in government is accountable.
100%. And I'm glad people are this is stuff we've highlighted for a long time. I mean, we're not the only ones, but
sure,
it's hitting mainstream and they're campaigning and talking about destroying it. It's great. This is anti-democratic and antithetical to the founder's vision. It imposes massive direct and indirect costs to taxpayers. Thankfully, we have a historic opportunity to solve the problem. November 5th, voters decisively elected Donald Trump with a mandate for sweeping change, and they deserve to get it. President Trump has asked the two of us to lead a newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge, to cut the federal government down to size. The entrenched and ever-growing bureaucracy represents an existential threat to our republic, and politicians have abetted it for too long. That's why we are doing things differently. We are entrepreneurs, not politicians. We will serve as outside volunteers, not federal officials or employees. Unlike government commissions or advisory councils or committees, we won't just write reports or cut ribbons. We'll cut costs. Let me see how long this is. This is pretty good so far. I actually haven't even read this yet. So, President has asked, I just read that. We are assisting the Trump transition team to identify and hire a lean team of small government crusaders, including some of the sharpest technical and legal minds in America. This team will work in the new administration closely with the White House Office of Management and Budget, which will be manned by Russell Vogt, which, or I don't know if I'm saying that last name right, but talked about him a lot in the Devo series. He was in that same position prior.
Yep.
Which I think is fascinating. Like if you're going to be cutting a lot of stuff that has to do with the budget, like he has it all mapped out from his last time there. Like he's going to be a great resource for that. We'll focus particularly on driving change through executive action based on existing legislation rather than by passing new laws. So can't wait for these new executive orders that are going to be coming out. Our North Star will reform will be the U.S. Constitution with a focus on two critical Supreme Court rulings issued during President Biden's tenure. West Virginia versus the EPA, which you talked about earlier. And then Loper Bright versus Raimondo,
which is Chevron
doctrine, and held that federal courts should no longer defer to federal agencies' interpretations of the law. Let's see. When the president nullifies thousands of such regulations, critics will allege executive overreach. In fact, it will be correcting the executive overreach of thousands of regulations promulgated by administrative fiat that were never authorized by Congress. The president owes lawmaking deference to Congress, not to bureaucrats deep within federal agencies. The use of executive orders to substitute for lawmaking by adding burdensome new rules is a constitutional affront. But the use of executive orders to roll back regulations that wrongly bypass Congress is legitimate and necessary to comply with the Supreme Court's recent mandates. And after those regulations are fully rescinded, a future president could simply flip the switch and revive them, but would instead have to ask Congress to do so.
Yeah, couldn't
simply flip a switch and revive them.
So President Trump can get rid of them and they can't just bring them back, because now, according to the Supreme Court, the Congress would have to set up these agencies and delegate to them specific authorities, none of which were important, like things that should be voted on or have accountable elected people behind them. It really is incredible how quickly it all can go away.
Yeah, this is very interesting, especially like with the executive order stuff. But I'm trying to think of how we can tie this to election reform. So, like, first of all, he's going to be bypassing Congress, and one of our issues with our fraudulent election system is the people that get put into Congress, which in previous administrations or through other means, like they could stonewall and block a lot of the stuff Trump wants to do. But they're basically saying right here, we're going to bypass all the unelected or selected bureaucrats and just do whatever we need to do. And then, but how can they fix our elections doing something like this? Like, can they get rid of CISA and some of these other agencies that are embedded in our election infrastructure?
I think that's certainly possible. I mean, that's the answer to that is yes. Whether that's the strategy, I don't know. Some of the stuff's going to have to be fixed at the state level and is not going to be up to Donald Trump to fix. But, he can help by making sure the entire country knows that our elections are fake.
Yeah. To talk about a drastic reduction in federal regulations provides sound industrial logic for mass headcount reductions across the federal bureaucracy. The president can use existing laws to give them incentives for early retirement and to make voluntary severance payments to facilitate a graceful exit. So, when we were at GART, we had a lady stand up talking about how she's at the DOD. I know what my job does is like irrelevant and like I'm overpaid. It was interesting what she was saying, but she said, I am concerned because like this is my livelihood. Well, here they're basically saying like, we understand that and you will get severance or some sort of early retirement incentives. Conventional wisdom holds that statutory civil service protections stop the president or even his political appointees from firing federal workers. The purpose of these protections is to protect employees from political retaliation. But the statute allows for reductions in force that don't target specific employees. So basically, it's like, doesn't matter who we fire if we fire everybody in that department. I'm here for that. Finally, we are focused on delivering cost savings for taxpayers. Skeptics question how much federal spending Doge can tame through executive action alone. They point to the 1974 Impoundment Control Act, which stops the president from ceasing expenditures authorized by Congress. Mr. Trump has previously suggested the statute is unconstitutional, and we believe the current Supreme Court would likely side with him on this question. That's interesting.
There's also a thing in the just in the paragraph before, and we don't have to go back to it, but he basically made the point that because they've all been working from home for so long, they like even forcing them to come to the office 5 days a week would mean that they would see themselves out. And you kind of have to wonder if some of this stuff hasn't already been happening. I mean, they genuinely haven't been working in years at some of these offices.
Oh, for
today
sure.
they said the federal government owns or runs like 8,000 buildings that they heat and cool and provide electricity for, where no one goes to work.
It's crazy. It's insane. Yeah, the Supreme Court would side with them on the unconstitutionality of it. But even without relying on that view, Doge will help end federal overspending by taking aim at the $500 billion plus in annual federal expenditures that are unauthorized by Congress or being used in ways that Congress never intended, from $535 million a year to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and $1.5 billion for grants to international organizations to nearly $300 million to progressive groups like Planned Parenthood.
NGOs.
Yeah, NGOs, but also like think of State Department and the USAID, like all the foreign money we give away to all these countries. Like that's hundreds of billions of dollars right there too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy. The federal government's procurement process is broken. It's gone unexamined for years. The Pentagon recently failed its 7th consecutive audit, suggesting that the agency's leadership has little idea how its annual budget of more than $800 billion is spent. And that's actually interesting to me because I noticed the other day that 3 days before that article came out, or the report about them failing that audit for the 7th year in a row, Storch had released the guidance for criminal investigations of fraud offenses for within the DoD. So those got to be connected, or maybe it's not, but I mean, it seems unlikely to just be a coincidence.
Well, and to that point, I've also been writing now for a while about 2 places, Mali/Nigeria / Burkina Faso, which are places in Africa, countries that all touch in Africa, Northwest Africa. Ukraine has been sending money to ISIS there to overthrow the governments, like to try to overthrow the governments there. These are all governments that are backed by Putin, where the Wagner Group is there training them, helping them fight ISIS. We also have reports now recently over the past 2 weeks in Syria, where Ukraine is sending not only money, but also special forces into Syria to train ISIS to overthrow Assad. So, and that money is probably it actually most certainly is coming from the money that we are sending, the DoD is sending to Ukraine, to Zelensky to fight Putin.
Well, see, that's where it gets interesting, because the DoD is sending weapons. The money is coming through the State Department. But I mean, both of them are probably being misappropriated, misused anyway. So yeah, that if the correlation there it exists. So it'll be interesting to see if we ever actually get to the bottom of the Ukraine money pit or whatever, because we know there's bullshit going on over there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back to this. Critics claim that we can't meaningfully close the federal deficit without taking aim at entitlement programs like Medicare and Medicaid, which require Congress to shrink. But this deflects attention from the sheer magnitude of waste, fraud, and abuse that nearly all taxpayers wish to end, and that Doge aims to address by identifying pinpoint executive actions that would result in immediate savings for taxpayers. Make executive orders great again, guys. Can't wait. With a decisive electoral mandate and a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court, Doge has a historic opportunity for structural reductions in the federal government. We are prepared for the onslaught from entrenched interests in Washington. We expect to prevail. Now is the moment for decisive action. Our top goal for Doge is to eliminate the need for its existence by July 4th, 2026, the expiration date we have set for our project, and the kickoff of the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding.
Yeah, I think Trump said that the birthday party is going to be from Memorial Day 2025 until July 4th, 2026.
Yep.
But you know what I think is interesting about that date is we're always focused on the Constitution being the founding document, but the 250th birthday is the anniversary of the Declaration. It's not the anniversary of the Constitution, the anniversary of the Revolution. And so I don't know what they're trying to say there, but maybe they're like pointing to the country prior to the ratification of the Constitution.
Trump had
Because
three.
we did have one of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would argue the Declaration of Independence in a lot of ways is more important than the Constitution because it really was the start. It also kind of gives the mandate for what's happening. Ultimately, the Bill of Rights is, I think, supersedes the Constitution, is more important than the Constitution anyway. So just my opinion.
Yeah, Trump, that reminded me of Trump had a couple executive orders, going back to Trump's old executive orders, talking about the 250th anniversary of America's founding. This is back in like 2020. He had these three. Let me show this. He had let's see the order of this. The first one was the building and rebuilding monuments to American heroes. And that was 7/8 of 2020, talking. I mean, that's back when all those statues were being destroyed by Antifa and whatnot during the Summer of Love. And then the birthday of founding father Caesar Rodney, and this was 10/14 of 2020. And in that one, he mentions, wrong one. This is the one. As he's talking about this Rodney guy, he talks about this. Radicals will continue their efforts to tear down our founding fathers until Americans demand that it stop. That's why on Constitution Day, I announced the creation of a new national commission to promote patriotic education. The 1776 Commission will champion efforts to teach the truth about America's heroic founding and make plans to honor the 250th anniversary of America's founding. This is back in 2020. Now he's making a big deal of it again.
Wow.
Which I think is super interesting.
That Caesar Rodney thing is really interesting.
Yeah.
What if he's talking about founding fathers that aren't exactly the ones we tend to think of? Because there are those.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, didn't you used to write articles about that, Gordon?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a lot of different, like, lesser known founding fathers who come to mind who are like, for whatever reason, not pushed really hard in like mainstream academia. They tend to favor the Federalists, Chris. I mean, those are the guys who really get pushed. And when you look at what the Federalists were all about, they were about really, really strong relationships with London, really strong relationships with London bankers, no tariffs, so like free trade, which basically just means oligarchs coming in and dumping cheap goods onto the people.
Massive centralized federal government. And yeah, those are the only guys that our culture pretends ever existed at the founding, and that everything is from the Constitution on, when those guys clearly won the argument. I mean, influences aside, that was basically the moment where the big centralized federal government argument won.
Yeah. And basically, I mean, the way that whole thing plays out is ultimately with the War of 1812, the Federalist Party sides with Britain ultimately. They talk about seceding, like gathering states and seceding from the Union because they lost 4 elections in a row. And then James Monroe abolishes the Federalist Party at the end of the War of 1812 because he's like, y'all are traitors. Like, we're abolishing that. And then we go into the era of good feelings where we don't have any political parties.
The birthday of founding father Caesar Rodney is the only time Trump celebrated a birthday of a founding father back in his first administration.
That is very interesting. Now I need to go learn about this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this stuff.
It says that Rodney wrote into American history when, despite suffering from cancer and asthma, he traveled 80 miles overnight from Dover to Philadelphia through a raging thunderstorm in time to cast Delaware's deciding vote for independence on July 2nd, 1776. He helped ensure that the Declaration of Independence would be passed unanimously. Upon entering Independence Hall, Rodney is said to have uttered these words: "As I believe the voice of my constituents and all sensible and honest men is in favor of independence, and as my own judgment concurs with them, I give my vote for independence." He's not just a founding father, he's a fighter for American freedom, serving under George Washington at Trenton.
Wow, that's important.
Yeah.
He's a much better Delawarean than Joe Biden.
For sure.
Yeah. Washington apparently said that his service deserved the highest honor.
Well, we got to learn more about this guy.
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of leans into the whole Garden of Heroes concept, which I love. I think that's a sweet concept that Trump talks about doing, where he wants to make, public parks, national parks that have all just like statues of guys like this and tell the kind of stories that aren't told. And there are so many stories like this all over, especially the American Revolution, that are completely lost or just buried. That I think if you taught it to kids and you told it the right way and you told the story, it would make kids way more invested in America, like just the whole idea behind it, which is of course why they don't teach it.
Did Biden go to the University of Delaware?
It's a good question.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. Because part of me is wondering if like he's highlighting this for Biden reasons, but could be others. Definitely gonna have to look into them. Anyway, yeah, that is interesting. All right, I think that's all we.
Biden did go to the University of Delaware.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna look into that Rodney guy a little bit more.
Yeah,
that's this 250th anniversary thing it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, for sure. We need to line a guard up for July 4th, 2026. It sounds like.
Line a what?
Guard.
Line a guard.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that. Well, one our Plymouth, Massachusetts one, I think it's pretty close to Memorial Day, isn't it? Like maybe like the kickoff before the kickoff.
It's like the week before, I think. Yeah, in May.
Yeah.
By the way, I just found that Caesar Rodney played a significant role in the repeal of the Stamp Act.
Ooh, I saw that. Yeah, that's a big one.
Assisted in writing the Declaration of Rights sent to King George III, which ultimately led to the repeal of the Stamp Act in March 1766. So that'll be a good one to look at too.
Yeah, because the Stamp Act wasn't just about stamps; it was about paper too. So basically, they were taxing paper. They, the correspondence, the ability for you to write a letter and send it to your friend. Like, imagine if they were taxing our emails, if they were charging us money to send an email to each other, or like a text message or whatever. Like it was the same thing. So they were saying you're attacking our ability to communicate with one another, which of course was part of the point.
I also wonder. Okay, now I'm getting conspiracy even further. 292 is in here like 4 or 5 times. I wonder if there's like a Q connection there. One of you guys should or what's the app everybody uses?
QAG.news.
Let's see if I can look this up. How do you? I don't know how to search for a specific one.
Like a number. I think if you put a hashtag on something, one of them is you put a hashtag. I forget which site it is. And there's also a drop number search on QAG.news.
Okay, it doesn't seem that important, but I'll put it on the screen. Oops. What is that ring?
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that means either.
All right. You're gonna have to ask Stormy.
Must be a picture or something.
Yeah, somebody's ring, maybe.
Okay. All right. Shall we go through some rants, maybe?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. For people, a couple things. First of all, I should get up our boosts too. But if you guys go to badlandsmedia.tv/groups, it's on our website. There is this poll or questionnaire for people wanting to get connected to the local Badlands groups that are forming up in your community or in the communities, like basically everywhere. Go to the website, badlandsmedia.tv/groups. It'll take you here. You fill it out, and somebody will get in contact with you and get you connected to your local group. So a lot of people have been asking about the best way to do this. This is how it can be done. So there's that. And then let's see if we got any boosts. Just give me 1 second here. And by the way, guys, we appreciate if you hit that thumbs up while you're watching. Okay, today's Saturday, right?
Today's Saturday.
The date's the 23rd. So let's see if we got any recent ones. The one I see here is $5 one. Oh no, we've read that one before. So looks like no recent boosts. But appreciate y'all anyway. Looks like, oh yeah, guys, tomorrow Burning Bright's new show is kicking off, The Narrative. Same
nice
Sunday time slot as Defected was, but it'll be Burning Bright and a rotating guest. And then also I saw Ash has a new show starting on Mondays at 3 Eastern. It's beginning December 2nd, and it's Alphas Make Sandwiches, which I absolutely love that name.
Wait, really? That's the title, Ash. I love that. See, I told you she's a bully. Like she can't even help it. She's gonna bully us even with the title of her show. So
yeah,
God bless her.
I have the intro video, and it's actually pretty cool. But it's like it's gonna be a female show right after the Y-Chrome show, like where all the dudes get on there and talk shit about women. Now they're gonna do their own show where they talk shit about the men, I think, and I'm here for it. I love it. So I have an intro video of theirs. I actually kind of want to play it, like their promo video, real quick, and then after that we'll do the rant. So just stick with us here, guys. Give me a second for this to load in. He's got to give love to the new shows for one, and we're always exploring, evolving our content here. Gordon, when are you going to pick up your new show?
Man, as soon as I need to find a good co-host, and yeah, man, like I think that it's probably time to do that and start talking about just documenting what's happening in the world, because there's so much happening in the world that needs to be discussed and needs to be like flushed out, and I think that would be a good. I can get really autistic and just kind of do without the TLDR.
You can just call it TL and just leave it at that.
Yeah, too long.
Just kidding. Before when I invited Gordon on the show, I was like, if you can, did I already say this?
No. You did text me and say if you can just keep it TLDR, you can come on the show.
Pretty much. I was like, if you can leave the BB style filibustering out of it, you can join us tonight. Okay, here's the promo video for Ash's new show starting soon. If BB had a promo video, I'd play his too, but we'll do this and then we'll do the rants. There's your female dedicated show, guys. So it's coming.
Congratulations to Burning Bright.
Yeah, she sent me the original one, and I was like, man, that would have been way funnier if you would have thrown Burning Bright in there. And then she sent, so I had to play that. But that's not the Burning Bright will not be in the actual intro video.
Well, she needs to get a video of, I was expecting to see like Alpha Warrior making a sandwich, like a video of him doing that. That would have been, I need to do at some point.
They have a bet going that if the girls do 2 shows before the new year, Alpha will make them sandwiches in Vegas at GART.
Okay, make that happen.
Well, yeah, that's why they're starting December 2nd. We've rushed this to air just for that. All right, let's do some rants. You guys have been great tonight. The Cooper family DMC. Hey Patrick, when are you bringing back Reading Epic Lit? Asking for a friend. He's not here to answer that, so we will pass that along. Melindy, cheers, Gordon. 122 clip of a Gen Z male getting wrecked by a woman from Jordan. I don't know if you saw that.
I haven't seen it, but I'll grab that. Thank you for sharing.
Put it in the chat here. S. Hole, Matt Gaetz for special counsel. I think we discussed that, but I don't see a path for that, but it's possible. John Doe 47 is Just Human still part of Badlands? He is not. You can go watch the final Defected episode and we addressed that. Thank you for the rant. The final demand. What's with everyone doing out on the J6ers will be pardoned through a case-by-case review. He's supposed to just blindly pardon every arrest that stemmed from J6. Maybe I'm retarded. Make it make sense. I don't know how he's going to handle that. Because there probably were some legitimate crime going on.
Yeah, I mean, we know for a fact that there were guys from the Azov Battalion who were there. So, obviously there's some bad actors in the crowd.
Yeah, it's also likely that they know who's who by now after like 4 years. So,
yeah,
it's possible that we see a quick pardoning of a majority of them and not a blanket. But who knows? That'll be one of those things. I don't even know if Trump's really addressed that.
Yeah, I mean, I saw people circulating that on X today where they were saying that the whole case by case, it'll be done on a case by case basis, and people were like, "Oh, that means he's gonna not just pardon like innocent people," which is bullshit. I think case by case means case by case, and that's exactly how you want anything evaluated. You don't want just like a blanket pardon for anything, regardless. So that doesn't bother me at all. I expect Trump to do a lot of narrative warfare between now and him entering office. That's just what makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Motivated Mom, West Virginia, or WV. Kathleen Master here. I see you, Kathleen. David was pumped to turn y'all in TV. He was so impressed with everyone reciting the Trump speech. I have to admit, it's so different watching y'all on screen after being at GART. Yeah, the live GARTs are always a blast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nice seeing you there,
yeah.
Kathleen. Resolute 23 Patriot. Trump's response to Gaetz stepping down as the Truth Social post for Trump and has, in quotes, look forward. So I mirrored the timestamp. Q3421 is a Q2874 repost. Gaetz continued. Go to Q2874, read the post, then click the link. Sorry about Gaetz, guys. The choice to know is up to us. Do you want to pull that up, Gordon?
Yeah, I got it.
Q2874.
2874. Says there's a Twitter link and it says, how do you fill your admin if majority of those in politics, quote unquote, are corrupt, draining the swamp? Wow.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Space Wanderer 77. Remember Trump's first EO in 2017. If mirror applies to EOs, what's happening now is laying the groundwork for a massive flood. I like it. 1027 JS supporting DPH one rant at a time. And you're supporting Badlands one rant at a time. You're on every show, Joe, and truly appreciate it. Badlands Media Fan. Shout out to the Iowa Badlanders fan group that got together for our first meetup today. Great to see all in attendance. That is great news. Great to see. Thank you for the rant. You guys got to send those pictures in when you guys meet up. White Rabbit Scholar. Has Gordon thought about doing a Badlands version of Drunk History? If so, I'm here for it. I'd be there for that too.
Yeah, I would watch that.
Maybe that's what the show should be, is just me doing that.
Drunk hair story. I'll watch your hair as the history comes through. That was so funny. Whoever said that at GART, that's hilarious. Junebug. So is it weird that Mitt Romney, Lindsey Graham, and Jeb Bush all congratulated Pam Bondi. One report said Jeb praised her. What do you guys think? I don't know.
I mean, I view it. I think these. This is exactly what they did last time. It's like once Trump was like in, they flipped their rhetoric. They stopped criticizing him. They stopped saying he was a clown, and they started like suckling at the teat and trying to kiss the ring. So I fully expect swamp creatures to come out and say whatever they need to say to get in Trump's good graces.
Yeah. We got Sammy the Squirrel. Nice to see you, Sammy. I wonder if we will have an MBS style of mass arrests of elites who are members of the deep state. That is the dream, man. The wet dream.
Mm-hmm.
We shall see. Simul 10. Since Ghost is on the show tonight, I want to take the opportunity to get this link to him. It will help his debate on the current nation of Israel. And I'll send you this YouTube link in the private chat.
Appreciate you sharing that.
That was not the link. Do you see that link there?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. The final demand. You guys see Gates' new handle on Twitter is @GreatCheck. The pic he posts on X talking to Malay at Mar-a-Lago tonight. Is he sharing his secret airy that he and Trump have, Secretary of State? I think Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, but who knows what's going on. Didn't he go visit Malay, or was that Bukele?
Who, Gates?
Rubio?
Gates.
Oh.
He visited Bukele.
I think it was Bukele when they kind of all went down, when Don Jr. was down there and whatnot.
Yeah. Keith O'Higgins, John, you're wrong about a Surgeon General's role in medical advice and consent. They have tremendous power. I remember Clinton Surgeon General promoting masturbation. Look at Pornhub's popularity now. Wow, Keith.
He's got a point.
That one. TJ Kibbles, Devolution and Q is real, and we're watching a movie, but isn't it BS that we're being deceived to bring justice to people who deceived us in the past, though? When are we going to be told the truth? Well, we got to demand that, I think, at some point, as Chris has been saying forever.
Instead, we just applaud that the television characters must be waking up the normies somehow.
Yeah. And then we get yelled at when we criticize people on Twitter for not telling the truth. How dare you say that about Charlie Kirk? He registered voters. Keith O'Higgins, MBS and Kushner's relationship was cemented after Jared's Secret Service detail evacuated his team out of Vegas during the Paddock shooting.
Very, very possible. I'm familiar with all those theories, and I find all of it fascinating. And obviously, G Money has told me his firsthand experience of being there. He absolutely insists that there were helicopters, so it's really, really fascinating.
And we did an episode on Baseless Conspiracies about that. That was pretty interesting as well.
The idea of doing a Vegas shooting GARP panel in Vegas, love that idea.
Yeah, just to clarify, we're not going to do a Vegas shooting. We're going to do a panel discussing the previous Vegas shooting that happened in 2017. Keith O'Higgins, they can't celebrate the anniversary of the Constitution. They would have to send out too many 3/5 of an invitation. I like that. Papa DB1, the last amendment was added in 1992. Ironically, for pay raises, we shouldn't be afraid to add one or two more to maybe catch up with the times we are currently in and heading for, or maybe stripping some away even. But yeah, and then Quinny63 with the final rant here. Had customer walk in and ask me how GART was. Said he listened all weekend. Badlands is getting huge, especially in Minnesota. Can't wait for Vegas. Just signed up. Love y'all. Oh yeah, the guys. If you were at GART Myrtle Beach in person or virtually, tickets went on sale yesterday. They're going on sale for the rest of the public on Monday. So we'll announce that probably on Basis Conspiracies, but just keep checking on Monday, or we'll post about it when it goes live. I checked on last night. I'm pretty sure we had sold like 25% of the tickets already. And they were only on sale for like not even 12 hours.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's gone up. So we've sold 107 tickets, and there's about 350 available. So gonna want to get those, fam. But all right, that's the show. Ghost, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Next time you gotta shave your head before you come on, so it doesn't feel so weird.
Yeah,
our bald guy.
Yeah, I guess it is a little different than having Patrick here. By the way, the dance video you shared at the beginning, I have an even better one of him dancing and doing those moves to Dancing Queen. I sent it to you, but it's a classic.
Oh, during the Gart live stream, the welcome reception, we saw he was there at the end, and he was doing those dance moves to the Tootsie Roll. It was great. All right, Chris, catch you later, man.
Good to see you guys.
Later, guys.
Witness the motion picture event that is being called fucking Amazeballs.
Do you see the difference in the M there?
It's go time. 25 later on my.
You got a seriously weird ass way of looking at shit.
If you look at the waviness of the little flag that comes out of the R is wavy. The one in the first hump in the M is not wavy. It's just a pure arc. Does that make sense?
We want to warn our viewers that these are extremely graphic images.
Give me a second, dude. This is more autistic than I've ever been before.